Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast and so on social off with outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authentic Theater, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone, and sorry we missed a week last week. Brainstormer needed the week off for personal reasons, and I wasn't going to be that much of a dick. So here we are.
And your host last time will want to be the aforementioned brainstorm of pop culture. Yeah, not to go too far in detail. Yeah, I just had some personal things. It just kind of hit me hard last week, and so I just kind of felt like I needed to take some time off and just focus on myself. So, we're just going to be playing catch up this week, and thankfully nothing really has come up.
Yeah, nothing super major occurred in the week we took off, so at least we finally got a fucking freebie. Also, Ahsoka Tano Gaming, in obviously not last week's episode, but in the last episode we did of this show, she asked us specifically to talk about the Nick Merckx Call of Rumors drama thing, and we aim to please. So we have found 3 of the best, and by best I mean worst, but highest on entertainment value and philosophical spurging that we could find.
Right, and I do want to preface this.
Preface.
Thank you, Dalton. We have 3 articles, but given how we work, I don't know if we'll be able to go through all of them.
Yeah, at least not this week. So anything we don't do this week, we will save for next week. Yeah. Although, since we didn't do a show last week, we do have 4 extra hours to play around with, so we can go long and StreamYard can't bitch at us for it. Yay.
Alright, so yeah, it's from Forbes.com. Call of Duty removed Nick Merckx operator skin from shop after LGBTQ comments. It's written by Paul Cassie and published June 9th, 2023.
We'll get into the punchline of what he actually said probably at some point in this. So I'm not going to criticize too much about the whole title of anti-LGBT comment, but suffice it to say, when we get into the actual comment he made, it's going to be freaking hilarious that they called it that.
Right. Okay. Mona?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, actually, okay, I guess I do want to give someone a disclaimer here, is that I have not played the whole Call of Duty since, I want to say Advanced Warfare, which came out like 2013, maybe?
And I've never actually played it. I'm only aware of it insofar as I am a gamer and I do keep an eye on the gaming space. To me, though, Call of Duty has always seemed like the normiest of the normie bullshit. Even as far as AAA games go, like Doom and GTA are even a little bit more geeky than Call of Duty. Call of Duty is just below Madden on the like normie to geekiness scale.
I mean, I appreciate some of the storytelling they've done before. So, you know. But, I mean, I don't disagree. To be fair, I've stopped kind of gaming over the last decade or so. Just, I don't know, nothing's come out, so.
I play a lot of phone games, which I know makes me a bit of a basic bitch, but hey, Marvel Strike Force is pretty freaking awesome.
Also, you have terrible hand-eye coordination.
Also, I don't have a console of my own, and I don't, like you say, I have shit hand-eye coordination, so I couldn't do well with controllers anyway. And I also don't own a PC, so it's either I game on phone or I do not game at all.
You know, I actually used to. I played like one RPG online, and it was DC Universe Online.
The last time I actually sat down and played a video game, it was Cuphead, because Cuphead is awesome.
But just so like we're all clear, we're technically not gamers. And again, I don't really play video games because
I
said
you don't have to you don't have to play games all the time in order to be a gamer. It's like any other kind of geekdom. As long as you're informed on the settings of video game IPs and give a shit about geekdom, then for example, I back in the day when Gamergate was still in the public, was still the cause du jour, I considered myself a Gamergater, and I still kind of do, because unlike a lot of Gamergaters, I don't subscribe to the theory of we lost and it's irrelevant now. We'll get into that in short order when we get to some of the other articles on this, because the specter of Gamergate still haunts the nightmares of a lot of these social justice oriented wankers.
Right. But yeah, just again, like we're not. Again, I don't play video games these days just because like there's nothing really interesting that's come out that caught my eye. And the last one I played, like video game wise, just overall is Cyberpunk 2077.
And like I said, the last game I actually sat down and played that wasn't on my phone was Cuphead, and I currently am level 73 on Marvel Strike Force. And for now, that's the extent of my actual gaming. That being said, I consider gaming kind of a subheader of geekdom in general, so I do keep my eye on gaming discourse, for lack of a better word, and I absolutely adore many video game settings. Like for example, I just got done rewatching for like the 500th time the Castlevania anime, because the Castlevania anime is fucking gold standard for how you adapt the video game properly.
I watch a lot of videos and stuff on lore of video games. Cause honestly, I like playing like video games have like some really interesting lore to them and stuff.
And my one friend Nick constantly, whenever we talks to me about how prescient Fallout is, to the point that he actually had to stop playing Fallout just because Fallout was becoming increasingly more prescient, and I can't blame him.
Shall we?
Yep. Moving on.
High-profile streamer and phase content creator Nick Merckx grew so large in the Call of Duty community that eventually Activision gave him his own branded operator skin. But that operator has now been removed from sale in the wake of his comments in a thread posted by MLG's Chris Puckett showing an attack by an anti-LGBTQ group on pro-LGBT group during Pride. Nick Merckx's tweet, which has now been viewed 11.3 million times by Twitter metrics, says to leave the little children alone, that's the real issue.
Okay, for context, this alleged assault on LGBT protesters, it happened at a high school because a bunch of teachers at said high school were introducing LGBT stuff into the curriculum, not just the sex ed curriculum, mind you, where it would at least make a tangential amount of sense, but into the general curriculum. And that was what resulted in the protests, both on either side. And again, just for the record, just so everyone knows, I am fucking gay. I am very very gay. Um, not quite super. Thanks for asking, gay, but I am at least as gay as the average person probably would imagine Fraser or Niles Crane to be. So there's that.
No,
And
I've never seen Frasier. I've never seen Frasier.
Yet another thing for which we'll have to strap you into the Ludovico technique chair eventually. But
Sorry, let me rephrase that. And I'm mistaken. I have seen it, but I just couldn't get into it. Granted, I saw it when I was pretty young, so I might change my opinion now, but I don't know.
But anyway, while I mentally plot to strap Brainstormer into the Ludovico technique chair from Clockwork Orange, back to the point. The thing of it is, again, in the actual full context of the incident, he was referring to the fact that pride as a concept and LGBT subject matter in general was being forced onto students. And that was what led him to say the thing about leave the little children alone. Which, again, speaking as someone who's actually fucking gay here, I agree with him. Just like if it were 20 years ago, and we were still in the midst of the TradCon satanic panic with like gay conversion therapy and quote unquote memory regression during the satanic panic and shit. If he had said that exact same sentiment back then, no one would be fucking batting an eye. Well, just like you shouldn't force straight sex onto kids in every fucking subject matter under the sun, you shouldn't force gay sex onto kids with every subject matter under the sun either. And the fact that you can turn the phrase leave the little children alone, that's the issue, into an anti-LGBT sentiment sort of suggests to me where your activism is pointing and brings to mind the famous We Will Convert Your Children song, which I know was supposed to be somewhat satirical when it was made, but the satire defense only works so far if you actually go ahead and do it. Just like a Christian choir singing about conversion therapy would also be only so satirical if they actually went ahead and started doing it. Moving on.
Right, okay. I'm not gonna read the tweets. Just, I don't know. Yeah. It is reference to a common Republican talking point alleging that the LGBTQ community is grooming children by educating them about the existence of sexual and gender identity.
Again, that is not the issue. There are two vectors of the issue with regards to the way they're actually going about doing it. Number one, they're not limiting it to simply sex ed class, which is wrong. And two, they are trying to frame it as a morally virtuous thing to be.
Sorry, you keep bringing up sex ed, but to my knowledge, and where I grew up, sex ed. I thought they stopped doing sex ed classes.
No, not.
I never had any at all.
Okay, that's a bit mildly disturbing that they never discussed sex ed with you, but oh well.
They did when we were in elementary school. Like people came, it was the whole thing.
Okay, that's fucking creepy. For the record, folks, you should be in a sex ed class in fucking middle school when you're about, 14, 15, 16. Because that's around the age when puberty starts happening, and thus when you should be at least somewhat educated on such things, if you have it at all. But point being, they don't keep the subject matter strictly to sex ed. They frame it as a morally virtuous thing to be, which is also wrong, because children should effectively be an ideological neutral zone. And three, they bring it up in subject matters that sexuality simply period doesn't belong in. 4, they do it with kids who are underage, like severely underage. For example, that infamous Gays Against Groomers Act that everyone lost their shit over only applied to kids between the ages, or between the grades of kindergarten and third grade, which frankly you shouldn't be exposed to any sexual content between the relative ages that you would normally be in, either between kindergarten and third grade at all, because again, sex ed belongs in middle school. When people actually start fucking going through puberty, like for example, when I had sex ed, it was an extension of health class, where we were basically discussing like biology and the food pyramid and things of that nature. It was an extension of health class, which makes perfect fucking sense, because if you're, especially given the targets, or the majority of people who took that class were in fucking, either middle school or very early high school, which is the age you want to be discussing such things. And again, I don't see this issue as an anti-LGBT issue, because frankly, if straight people were foisting the old, abstinence bullshit onto kids as young as like kindergarten through third grade, I would also be creeped out by that, and I would also be telling them to leave the little children alone. Although the biggest thing here is, I find it kind of disingenuous that you're framing it as though it's only a Republican talking point, and that there isn't anything in reality for that talking point to be based on or in reference to. Especially when you consider that teachers on TikTok, and that doesn't include people who are nominally elementary school teachers, will actually talk about how they want to bring up sexuality and gender identity and the broader LGBT thing to kids who are in fucking elementary school. Moving on.
Yeah. Is a reference to a common Republican talking point alleging that.
You read that?
Oh, sorry. It's been a focus. Florida's Don't Say Gay laws and has been. Oh, sorry, I misread that. Sorry. It's been the focus. Florida's Don't Say Gay laws and has become a major platform issue for many Republicans. especially Florida's own governor and presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis.
First of all, DeSantis has no hopes. It's probably going to be Trump. And honestly, he should have kept out of the race until 2028, and then he could have been the successor to Trump. By putting himself in direct opposition to Trump, he basically nuked his own political career. But that's neither here nor there. Again, if you actually read the alleged "Don't Say Gay" bill, you would know it only applies to kids between the ages of kindergarten or preschool and third grade. Which, yeah, you should not be foisting any sexuality onto kids that young, whether it's as gay as Big Gay Al or as straight as a Stepford wife. You should not be sexualizing children. Period. Full stop. Children are a neutral zone for sexuality in particular, but yes, also morality and ideology. If I had my druthers, we wouldn't even be giving children religious education that young, because frankly, someone's religious views are their fucking choice, and you should only be discussing with people capable of actually internalizing the information and actually rationally considering it. So any kid below the age of reason should not be eligible for ideological or religious indoctrination of any fucking kind, certainly not of a sexual nature.
Hello, Self-Autonomous Gaming.
Yeah, we took your requests on board, and so we found 3 of the best, and by best I mean worse, but at least most entertaining articles on the Nick Merck / Call of Groomers thing.
Okay. Alright, move on. Moving on, or
Yes.
okay.
Sorry, I was reading Ahsoka's chats.
Call of Duty responded a day later by announcing they were removing Nick Merck's Spartan Fleet operator skin from the store. Okay. Not surprised they did that, but you know.
Again, leave the children alone with your ostensibly sexual ideology in a non-sex ed class. Really shouldn't be that controversial, period, whether it's straight, gay, or anywhere else. But also, if you can look at the phrase "leave the little children alone," and see it as anti-LGBT, that says to me you have some odd stereotypes about LGBT activism, and it says to me that if you are an LGBT activist and you see that as anti-LGBT, which direction your activism is pointing in, namely the unironic version of "we will convert your children," in which case GTFO. And I'm saying that as a fucking gay guy.
Alright, give me 1 sec, Ahsoka. I'll read those comments you made. I just wanted to get through another paragraph real quick, so give me 1 second. Okay, they say recent events, but they specifically cite their own celebration of Pride, indicating Nick Merck's comments were not something they wanted to be officially associated with the top creative partnership. The skin has not been deleted from the collection of those who already purchased it, but it is no longer for sale. Okay. Nick Merckx later posted a video explaining on the tweet, saying he didn't mean to upset anybody, but made it clear he is not apologizing for the tweet. I don't think it's wrong, he said. He alleges the point he was trying to make was about how parents should talk to their children about those issues rather than teachers talking about it in the classroom, sparking debates about existing sex ed classes in schools.
Entirely correct. As I said, I have no problem bringing this kind of shit up when the kids are like 14, 15, 16 and it's sex ed, because that's where this kind of material belongs. but you sure as shit don't get to bring it up in a non-sex ed format, and you under absolutely no fucking circumstances whatsoever should be bringing it up to kids who aren't even potentially pubescent. Like as soon as puberty begins to kick in and they need to have this conversation, send them to sex ed, have this conversation all you fucking want. But before that, fuck off. Except don't fuck off. Abstain from all of the fucking off. I guess is the best way of putting that.
So, no. Let me read Soka's comment. Okay. Let's be honest here, the books that people have been protesting against was barely showing gay pornographic depictions of it in a book that was in elementary school. It's like I am bi, but I don't want kids to learn this shit at this early. The possible math stuff, aka keto. I have seen people who are activists who claim that maps do no harm. And finally, they're happening in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Again, like the thing about the banning of books thing, I'm not opposed to it being in the library somewhere. Where I draw the line is don't ever let it become part of the curriculum, and don't ever let the teachers actually advocate for it, or actively go out of their way to show it to the students. I have no problem with it being in the library somewhere, because frankly, kids should be encouraged to do their own independent reading as much as possible, i.e. reading outside of the direction of teachers and other adults. Because frankly, we need kids to understand the value of reading, and if showing them some Rob Liefeld comics or Mouse or any of the other edgier material is gonna encourage them to read, then by all the fuck means. Plus, there are dozens upon dozens of books in the school library that no one has ever or probably will ever read, and them's just the rules. So I don't have a problem with it existing in the library. Where I draw the line is if the teachers somehow make it mandatory reading, or if they read it in like a class group, like a teacher would normally do with something like, I don't know, Fahrenheit 451, or
we don't.
What was?
I never read that. We never read that. In my school,
I begin to wonder about the quality of your education, but then I remembered, oh wait, American educational system. Lord knows it's not going to be consistent. But or I guess something a little bit more age appropriate for kids we're talking about here would be like Indian in the Cupboard, or what the fuck was the name of the book about the raccoon, the kid who had a pet raccoon?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Was it Little? I know it's not Little Rascal, because that's the old 50s show thing. It's something having to do with Rascal, and it's a book about something about a kid finds a injured raccoon, nurses it to health, and then it becomes his pet. And I can't fucking think of the name of it, but I remember reading. I remember our teacher reading that to us, or reading it as a class in like 3rd grade. That's the kind of book that kids that age should be reading, like Indian in the Cupboard, or whatever the fuck that book is called. But yeah, no, it certainly shouldn't have anything to do with sex.
I just don't want it in elementary school or being in anyone under 15, 16. So Soka.
Like I said, that's why I draw the line at, I don't care if it's in the library somewhere, just kind of don't draw any attention to it would be my rule, and don't make it part of the curriculum.
Neil?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It goes without saying this has resulted in a massive firestorm. While previously a big debate in the Call of Duty community was about whether Nick Merckx deserved his own skin in the first place, now there are very vocal contingents who believe that Activision did the wrong thing here. And conversely, Activision is being praised by LGBT supporters for the move, which they view as a big win. A declarative statement of allyship from one of the largest gaming publishers and franchises.
Okay, fuck you, Activision. I am gay. I do not stand with those people. Because it wasn't like he even said anything. Like, if he said, if he unironically and unjokingly used the 3-letter F word for gay people, then we might be having a conversation. Then I might at least see where you're coming from. But all he said was children too young to be worried about any sex at all shouldn't be exposed to LGBT crap. Which is true and accurate and would be equally true if it were straight shit. Like, if it like again, I want Activision to imagine an alternate universe where the internet became popular like it is now about 20 years earlier. So this kind of social media backlash could happen like during the Satanic Panic. Imagine a world where the the false memory implanting that got sold as memory regression in the 90s, or the gay conversion therapy that was popular back then. Imagine a world where that takes the place of modern day gender affirming healthcare, quote unquote. And then Nick Merckx said something to the effect, basically imagine a world where it was the TradCon evangelicals doing, straight conversion therapy to kids, and he said the exact same thing. All of a fucking sudden, it wouldn't be a controversial thing he said. But to you, it seems controversial that he doesn't want any sexuality to be foisted upon children, whether it be straight or gay. It tells me more about what you think LGBT activism is than it does about his actual opinions on gay people. Because I'm a gay person, and even though, looking back, there are things that you could definitely point to in my childhood that would imply, that I was always going to turn out gay, I still wouldn't want to have been pushed into it any harder than I was, because children should be a neutral zone. Children should be treated as much as possible like blank fucking slates. And they should be allowed to be blank fucking slates as long as they can be. Again, in my ideal world, you wouldn't even give children religious education. Because to me, a personal choice like sexuality, like gender identity, or like religion should be a decision that is made by people with the capacity to reason. Which means that if a child is below the age of reason, they should be an ideological, moral, religious, and philosophical neutral zone. The only thing you should be telling kids are things that are unvarnishedly true and unavoidably true. And when they become capable of doing their own fucking reasoning, then you can have a conversation with them about religion or ideology or sexuality or gender. But not fucking before. Kids are a neutral zone. Moving on.
Okay. So Kyle Gaming said, I like to use a TV analogy. It's like having a literal porno being made easy for everyone. It's like, be honest, that is basically what they're doing. and I am a bi-female saying this.
Sorry, read that again. I couldn't understand you.
I would like to use a TV analogy. It's like having a literal porno being rated E for everyone because that's, let's be honest here, that is basically what they are doing, and I am a bi-female saying this.
Yeah, and again, like I said, imagine a world where it's still 1990, but for some reason the internet exists, which means we're still in the throes of like the Jack Thompsons and Pat Robertsons and Satanic Panics of it all. Imagine a world where straight conversion therapy was as common as trans surgery and quote unquote gender affirming care is now. And the alternate universe version of Nick Marks said, "Leave the children alone," to that. All of a sudden, you get all the SJWs understanding exactly what he fucking means. But because it's their team that happens to be winning, they all of a sudden don't see how the rules apply to them.
Yeah, I was going to say, so yeah, the internet existed in the 80s.
Right, but I mean, imagine a world where the internet got started about 20 years earlier, and so they had the modern internet in the 90s.
Okay, yeah, the 1990s and 2000.com bubble literally happened in the mid to late 90s when it began.
Yeah, I know, but what I mean is imagine a world where instead of the SJWs doing cancel culture, it's the satanic panicking Jack Thompsons and so forth of the world doing it. And imagine in said world that straight conversion therapy and memory regression, quote unquote, which we now understand to be false memory implantation, to be as common as gender affirming healthcare is today. And in this alternate universe, imagine Nick Marks saying, "Leave the children alone," in exactly the same way he did here. All of a sudden, you'd get the SJWs finally going. You'd get the SJWs on side, but because it's their team who's winning, all of a sudden they don't see how principles work.
Oh, hello, Janjo. Sorry for you. My topic was off for a bit.
Mm-hmm. We're answering Ahsoka's request and addressing the Call of Groomers thing.
Yeah. And again, I do want to repeat myself here just because I have an audience now. I'm sorry for again, just personal stuff kind of happened. Not gonna get into that, but yeah, I just felt like I needed to work on myself for like a week. So.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't enough of an asshole to force him to be on when he didn't feel like being on. So there.
Anyway. Well.
Yeah.
Additionally, there are debates now frequently seen on Twitter, especially about freedom of speech. Though Activision is a private company and able to take unilateral action independent of the First Amendment, which only refers to the government, that's what happened here.
Okay, fuck you, fuck this whole freedom of speech only applies to the government herder thing. There are rationales and stated principles inherent in those amendments. So it doesn't matter if, legally speaking, it only applies to the government. In principle, it is a statement that speech should not fucking be infringed. Also, I just want to point this out again. Even if Nick Marks had said a controversial thing, I would still be in favor of his freedom of speech, because freedom of speech is very much a universal thing if it matters at all. You know, the old George Orwell quote. If freedom of speech is to mean anything at all, it means the right to tell you that which you do not want to hear. Or I think he said expression, but nevertheless, the rule still applies. But that being said, he didn't say anything particularly controversial. All he said was, "Leave children alone. They shouldn't be indoctrinated by anyone's ideology." and I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the actual sentiment that he made, which I totally and completely agree with, and I'm fucking gay. Children should be a neutral zone, ideologically, morally, spiritually, religiously, whatever. Children below the age of reason should be treated like fragile embryos that you don't want to expose them to much of anything, lest they be damaged in some way. Children are the neutral zone from Star Trek in my ideal world. So it wouldn't matter to me if we were talking about, back in the Satanic Panic days, and let's say hypothetically the internet was more developed back then, and straight conversion therapy and false memory implantation was as common back then as it was as gender affirming care is today. And had Nick Merck said that exact same thing, I would still be agreeing with him, because children shouldn't be sexualized below the age of puberty, period. And frankly, they shouldn't be given ideological or moral or religious frameworks until they've reached the age of reason and can figure shit out for themselves. But again, that's me talking about my ideal children of the neutral zone position again.
Well,
moving on.
Sarcon again said, it is in the Constitution that says no one should have their freedom of speech taken away. Even if you are a prisoner, you can't have your right of speech taken away. They put in there that something like shouting fire in a crowded theater or in a crowded assembly is not covered. Nick Merckx is in his 30s, so he just reversed the birthday.
I'm speaking in a hypothetical where basically all of the internet culture stuff that is happening now happened about 20 years early, so all of the main personalities are still in place. Or we might not even have to stretch it that far. Imagine a world where, like I say, the internet progressed about 20 years faster than it did, and so during the Satanic Panic, you had social media and so forth. If let's pull a name out of the hat, like let's say Christopher Hitchens was a influencer in the hypothetical internet of this alternate universe 1990, and he said, leave the little children alone to all the straight propagandists. He would be just as right and would have just as much of my sympathy as does Nick Merckx now, because again, children in the broadest sense should be a fucking ideological neutral zone, especially where it comes to sex. Moving on.
The issue has brought other higher profile creators into the mix. Dr. Disrespect called the decision pathetic in a tweet last night. He's running Call of Duty PR and marketing now. Same people from the Purple Snakes, pathetic. I got nothing to that.
Yeah, it's true. All he said was, whether you like LGBT stuff or not, it shouldn't be in the sphere of understanding of people who are prepubescent. And again, I'm paraphrasing again, but that's basically what he meant. And any clarification that he's made on the case has shown that is exactly what he meant. And I agree with him. If you aren't at the very least approaching pubescentness, sexuality should be the furthest thing from your fucking mind. Now, granted, as a caveat to that, I will say I don't see movies like Paranorman or Onward as gay propaganda any more than I see Snow White or Sleeping Beauty as straight propaganda. So you can still have characters in movies and stuff that children might consume that are gay or whatever. It's just the difference between the stuff that should only be referenced in sex ed and only to kids that are at least approaching the possibility of pubescentness.
Moving on.
Moving on, yeah.
All right. Oh, so YouTube's coming up on his birthday. I did not know. Thank you. So good. Tell us. It's going to be the 18th anniversary soon, apparently, for YouTube.
Well, neat.
Yeah. I am fine with trans people. I just don't want drag shows in elementary schools or places where young children are. Now, my ex-boyfriend, who was my best friend growing up, who transitioned at 19, they even say they don't want that stuff in their faces at that age.
Yeah, I've run into trans people who don't like this shit either. And I've also run into people who are into drag that don't like this shit either. Because again, I think on some level, broadly speaking, people broadly agree with my sentiment, or at least they could be easily convinced to agree with my sentiment that children should be a ideological neutral zone, especially where sex is concerned. Which means no straight conversion therapy, but also no gay conversion therapy either. And a lot of quote unquote gender affirming healthcare in this day and age, especially where children are concerned, does basically amount to converting children who would otherwise probably not be gay into being gay or trans. Moving on.
In addition to Nick Merckx, now everyone who comments on the issues either way is subject to the sort of intense debate we're seeing play out on the political stage daily, with the gaming community grappling with the same issues. Overwhelmingly, gaming publishers and developers have embraced Pride celebrations and public LGBTQ support the last few years, especially. So Activision's move is not especially surprising, but it was always going to be controversial.
Okay, and I guess here's as good a place as any to bring this up. The LGBT activist lobby does not speak for actual gays, lesbians, transgenders, or bisexuals. Okay, I am gay, or technically, I suppose you could say I'm bisexual, but my ratio of liking boys to liking girls is such that it's basically all but irrelevant, and I'm fine with calling myself gay. But in any case, like I am gay, and the LGBT movement does not represent me. Nor does Pride celebration necessarily represent me. Frankly, again, the idea that you can take a phrase as nominally laid back and easygoing and just neutral as children shouldn't be ideological pawns or vessels for ideological programming, which is basically what he said, as an anti-LGBT screed, tells me which direction your activism is pointing. And if you're using, my legitimacy or my gayness as an excuse to talk to children about sexuality, I hereby revoke your legitimacy. You have no right to speak on my behalf. Fuck off.
Also, let's not forget the man who tried to say that you could raise a person born as a boy, as a girl, literally ending their own life shortly after they found out about it.
I mean, To some degree, that's probably at least arguably true because sex and gender are two different things. Like you could raise a male with a female a gender role of girl or woman, and probably it would probably work. It's still unethical because again, children should be a fucking moral and ideological neutral zone, as I keep fucking saying. In my ideal world, you wouldn't even be able um to bring children into religion below the age of reason, because in my opinion, personal decisions like sexuality, gender, religion, what have you, and certainly where it concerns moral ideology or philosophical ideology, should be a thing that is only discussed and only considered by people above the age and capacity to reason.
Yeah, the thing that Mutsu put up as that you can do it, the experiment was an absolute failure. The boy that this happened to literally there was an accident and his junk got destroyed and he was a newborn.
Well, that's the thing. Children with, I guess what you could call gender typical or cis expression start exhibiting it pretty much as soon as they're capable of understanding anything. Like they've done studies where they've shown different toys that are normally gendered to children, and as a general rule, baby baby little girls get drawn to um toys that are simulation toys like dolls and babies and houses and things, and little boys are drawn to toy versions of weapons and machines like tractors and guns and swords and what have you. And this is a proclivity they start expressing like I think it's 2 months, maybe 3 months after they're fucking born.
Uh, you
No,
want to
no, and to Ahsoka's point, gender roles are kind of childish and silly on some level. Like I when I was 5, I dressed as Snow White for Halloween. Um, and I didn't find anything wrong with that. Granted, I did, of course, turn out to be gay, so there's that. Um, but there's nothing wrong with that. And even before I really realized I was gay, I again kind of acted a little bit like Fraser Crane or Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So I was probably always going to be a little bit effeminate and nerdy. But you know, you don't have to be a hyper masculine man to still be a man, and you don't have to be a hyper feminine woman to be a woman. Granted, that doesn't mean that there are no trans people or that people who are genuinely trans shouldn't be allowed to express that, but just because someone, you know, might be a little bit more feminine as a guy or a little bit more masculine as a girl doesn't mean that, whoop, I guess we got the identification wrong. We better start raising them as the other gender.
anyway, uh, I mean, I like monster trucks and machines. That doesn't mean I'm trans. I guess what's tomboy, so I'm basically has been seen as something that doesn't exist anymore. I'm over 6 feet tall, and I'm the same size between both of nephews and nieces. I literally am a tomboy. So
Uh-huh. Whereas I am a 5'4", 5'5" manlet and very, very uncharacteristically posh, given that I was raised in a like lower middle to working class family in rural Pennsylvania. Them's just the breaks. Anyway, moving on.
Sorry. Representatives for Nick Merckx say he will release a statement on the subject Friday, June 9th, so it must have already come out, I think. Update. This is the update statement from Nick that was promised, which mainly thanks his supporters for having his back. Friends are created in good times, but families are built through adversity. Appreciate you, all of you that have my back, understand my position as a new father, and recognize the love I have for all.
See, I disagree with him on his friend versus family demarcation, because in my experience, I've often been more close to friends than I have been to my family. So I would almost invert that, but that's just me.
To be fair, it depends on how you define family.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm mostly just nitpicking his epistemology on that one, but I get the sentiment. The idea is that that the people who have your back during hard times are more meaningful than otherwise. To which I would say to him also, speaking of philosophical spurgery, I agree with Aristotle on this. If you have alleged friends who won't be there for you in hard times, they aren't actually meaningfully you shouldn't actually call them friends, because friends are the sorts of people who are there when you need someone to be there regardless. And I've always in my personal lexicon differentiated between friend and acquaintance. I have plenty of acquaintances who I don't really care one way or the other about, but my friends I would take a bullet for, or say sit there for 2 hours listening to them tell me about their problems, which I've been doing a lot of recently because Saturn retrograde has really fucked up a lot of my friend group.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Soka. In my situation, I treat my friends and family equally. Finding a friend, I will have your help, and my family also has your back during those times. I treat my friends like family. Yeah, that's how I generally see it too.
I see. Here's the thing. I don't give people who just happen to be biologically connected to me an instant access to my loyalty. Granted, I do have many family members who have had my back. You know, my mom is basically a saint. She raised a crippled kid who turned out to be gay later on. So life couldn't have been easy on her. Especially because my stepdad was very often no help, and the less said of my actual biological father, the better. But the thing of it is that might be why I consider friends to have more criteria than family, because you don't deserve my loyalty simply because we're biologically connected. You deserve my loyalty as and when you've demonstrated that you deserve it, and not before.
General way I see it, family style close by default. They can still squander it with their They can still squander it with their actions. Friends start off as mutual randos and work into it.
But I guess I guess I could defer to an old phrase. Um, you being my family means I have to love you. It doesn't mean I have to like you. I guess that's where I'm at with the whole friend versus family distinction. Family will automatically be subject to some degree or other of my toleration, but my loyalty belongs mostly to those that earn it, whether they be friends, family, or otherwise. So I will tolerate my family, doesn't mean I like them. Whereas to when I make a friend, they get my loyalty because I don't make friends easily.
Anyway, we should probably move on.
Yes, next article.
I also want to pretty much everything Dalton sent this week. So This is from the MarySue.com.
Because you know that on any given contentious issue, the Mary Sue is going to have the most entertainingly batshit take, and it's going to be the most fun to tear apart. Plus, it's been a fucking while since we revisited the Mary Sue, so it's always nice to meet them in intellectual combat. Mostly because it's a little bit like beating a child, but you know, whatever.
Call the Groomers boycott even more pathetic than Bud Light. Target anti-LGBTQ backlash. It's written by Anna Valen. Published June 9, 2023. I don't really have anything to say to that. So just move on. Okay. First there was Bud Light, then there was Target. There was an attempt on Chick-fil-A. Now it's Call of Duty. The far right is trying to boycott Activision Blizzard's popular shooter over the company's stance on LGBTQ rights. And it may just be one of the most foolish conservative backlashes yet. Go ahead.
Okay, Mary Sue, ye of the feminist journalist persuasion, you really do not have even the slightest leg to stand on here. Bear in mind that I'm speaking as someone who literally has spastic diaplegic cerebral palsy and therefore, without a walker or a wheelchair, literally doesn't have a leg to stand on in the literal sense. But you have even less leg to stand on in the metaphorical sense than I have literally to stand on. Because especially on the topic of Chick-fil-A, I remember, much like Pepperidge Farm, there was a time when the feminist / social justice leaning people fucking hated Chick-fil-A's guts. I especially remember a video by the YouTuber known as Lindsay Ellis back when she was still considered the nostalgia chick. She tied together a boycott of Chick-fil-A and the video bashing Orson Scott Card back in the day. So it is literally in living memory when the social justice / feminist people came for Chick-fil-A, and now that they were conquered ground and their main customer base actually had a problem with that, now you're defending Chick-fil-A when previously you wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. Also, the Bud Light boycott, absolutely nothing to do with LGBT bullshit. Nothing. Not even trans. Because as cringy as Dylan Mulvaney's ad campaign might have been, the thing that clenched it, and I agree with V on this, the thing that clenched it was the ad executive, or rather the PR executive for Bud Light, saying our main customer base is normally fratty and douchey and redneck and out of touch, and we wanted to court a better class of people, basically. Well, here's the thing. While Bud Light was while that person who worked for Bud Light may have been wrong to hurl as much invective as she hurled at that demographic, descriptively speaking, she wasn't wrong. Like, sans the moral and political invective and the degradation and the dismissal, most of Bud Light's customer base are rednecks, truckers, sports fans, frat bros, and the like. So that, honestly, I think, and I agree with Dee on this, has more to do with the backlash than does Dylan Mulvaney. Because as cringy as her ad campaign was, if Bud Light had come out and kissed ring to its fan base, and apologized for the wrongheadedness of the ad campaign and just kind of swept it under the rug and continued being Bud Light, they probably would have gone mostly unmolested by their customer base. It was the reaction to people being upset by the cringiness of Dylan Mulvaney that really clenched the boycott on that one. It was that, much like many companies in this day and age, rather than go, oh shit, we fucked up and pissed off a large percentage of our customer base, quick, we have to cater to our fan base. Rather than doing that, like so many other companies before them, whether it be, entertainment companies like Disney or Marvel or Star Wars or Star Trek, or whether it be other consumer products like Gillette, because I remember the Gillette boycott. They made the mistake of doubling down and going, oh yes, we don't want our original customer base. We want them to fuck off and be replaced by their betters. And so the audience went, okay, if you think there's some other mythical audience out there somewhere, good luck courting them. We won't be needing you anymore. Also, let's not front about this whole Bud Light thing, in the sense that apart from the rednecks, frat boys, NASCAR loving, sports fans that drink Bud Light, there's really no one else left to drink it, because Bud Light isn't a drink that exists because of flavor. It exists because it's just light enough to give you a little bit of a buzz after about 6 of them, and no one actually enjoys the taste of it. They enjoy the buzz they get from drinking about 6 of them. And I know, because my family still consumes Bud Light. But that's neither here nor there. As for the Target thing, that happened because, again, there was LGBT merchandise, several of which had a satanic bent, that was extant in kids' clothes, which again points out where the activism is going. Activism that I don't fucking want as a gay person, by the way. Anyway, moving on.
On June 7th, FaZe Clan co-founder Nick Merckx Kolcheff tweeted about violent anti-LGBTQ protesters targeting the California School Board after the board decided to honor Pride Month. In response to the news, Merckx tweeted, "They should leave little children alone, that's the real issue." The esports star was, of course, uttering a dog whistle suggesting that the LGBTQ adults are grooming children. Did I cut out?
No, it just got muffled towards the end of the sentence.
Okay. The esports star was, of course, uttering a dog whistle suggesting that LGBTQ adults are grooming children.
Again, it had bumfuck nothing to do with LGBT. All he said was, bearing in mind the thing he was commenting on was a series of protests happening at a school that whoever they happened to be, should leave kids alone, and that was the issue. And again, I want to point out this is how you know it has nothing whatsoever to fucking do with the LGBT community. Because if we transplant this back in time to the 90s and create an alternate universe where the internet was, 20 years more advanced than it was at the time, and Christopher Hitchens said this about, the satanic panickers and the gay conversion therapy sorts of people. No one would fucking bat an eye, as well they shouldn't. And again, I want to point out my position on this for in perpetuity. Children should be an ideological, moral, religious, and philosophical neutral zone. Just give them the ability to reason for themselves. Give them unarguable facts, and let them come to their own fucking conclusions until they reach the age of reason. Then, if you want to have this conversation with them when they're of the age to actually engage in sex ed, which is round about the time they become pubescent, by all means, go right the fuck ahead. But not one instance before, and it sure as shit shouldn't be while they're still in fucking grade school. Moving on.
Okay. So there's some stuff here. I'm just pointing it out straight. They are fine with grown women doing stuff with boys, but literally we'll call the police on you, and it's just they should be fine with men and girls. And I ain't fine with either, but when you make an exception for one, you will eventually need to make an exception for more. It ain't even a dog whistle. What I state is just facts, and so is what Nick Merckx stated.
Yeah, like he didn't call out the LGBT movement. He didn't call out the Bible thumping, straight converting people either. He just said whoever they happen to be, they should leave fucking children alone. And rather than treat this like the neutral statement that it was, the media and Activision Blizzard jumped down his throat going, "How dare you be anti-LGBT?" Which again says more about what you stereotype gay activism as, or LGBT activism as, and what your goals of that activism might be, maps, than it does about the opinions of actual gay people. Because the LGB Alliance is a thing, and so is Gays Against Groomers. And so are completely unaffiliated gay people like me who just so happen to be opposed to social justice for literally the exact same reasons as we've always been opposed to the TradCon family values bullshit. My principles are non-negotiable. My principles are universalistic. I hated the Jack Thompsons and Frederick Worthams of the world back when the "won't somebody please think of the children" Helen Lovejoy syndrome was going on, and I hate the LGWs now when it's the rainbow-haired Karens instead of the Helen Lovejoys. I don't like morally authoritarian bullshit having its sway over the public sphere. Morality doesn't even belong in the public sphere at all. It belongs in the private sphere. The only thing that belongs in the public sphere that could even be potentially considered to be like related to moral philosophy is ethics. And ethics and morality are two different fucking things.
Okay. People would have an issue with the straight porno, like what the book is having in the libraries, but right when it becomes gay, it would be fine with them.
Yeah, it's literally, this is emblematic of our team winning, therefore it's moral by definition, and if you have a problem with it, it's only because you're immoral. That's the rationale. Moving on.
Alright. Nick Merckx went on to explain on a quick stream that he and his wife want to be the ones to talk to our kids about things like that. Video bothers me. I just don't think it's any place for a teacher or a school. I don't think it's the place to speak about things like that, he said. And it's not that I think it shouldn't be spoken about.
Yeah, I don't see any problem. The only asterisk I would put beside what he said there is sex ed. If this is in middle school or early years of high school, when we're talking about when kids are pubescent and they're actually in like a sex ed class, by all the fuck means, just the asterisk I would put beside that is just don't talk only about gay sex. Talk about sexuality as it relates to biology as you should in a sex ed class. And if you happen to bring up gay sex or fetishes or whatever, that's the tenure you should be, or that's the um venue you should be discussing that in. I couldn't remember the word venue for a second there. But if the children are under the age of being pubescent or being able to reason in the abstract about shit like this, it should be nowhere in their education. And again, that doesn't mean don't ever show them like Paranorman or Onward or whatever the fuck. It means that just like Snow White or Sleeping Beauty isn't straight propaganda, you should be able to show kids Paranorman or Onward, and it shouldn't count as gay propaganda either. But there's a difference between, oh hey, these people exist, and oh hey, that's an okay thing to be, versus it's an actively virtuous thing to be, and it's better for you to be gay. That's the difference. Just like, showing kids Snow White or Sleeping Beauty wouldn't count as straight propaganda, but if you started talking to them about gay conversion therapy or implanting memories under the auspices of, memory regression, like they did during the Satanic Panic, that would count as straight propaganda. Moving on.
In direct response, Activision Blizzard decided to distance itself from the esports figure by pulling the Nick Mercs Operators bundle from both Modern Warfare 2 and Call of Duty's Battle Royale mode, Warzone. Folks that celebrate Pride with our employees and our community, the official Call of Duty account tweeted. No one is forcing you to tweet stupid stuff like this.
What exactly was stupid about the thing he said? Because again, it's only stupid if you assume that LGBT activism needs to be specifically targeted at children for some reason. Just like, again, in the possible alternate universe where the internet got going about 20 years earlier than it did, if Jack Thompson, Frederick Wortham, or actually no, Frederick Wortham was long dead by the 90s, but if the Helen Lovejoys acted like modern day Karens and started preaching the virtues of conversion therapy with the same regularity as modern day teachers preaching the virtues of gender affirming healthcare for children, and someone like, say, Christopher Hitchens or Samuel Harris tweeted that same thing, you would all of a sudden understand why it's a bad thing to sexualize and moralize children. But because you consider your ideology to be sacrosanct and above questioning, just like the fundamentalist Christians used to with regards to the family values thing, you all of a sudden don't see, treating kids who should, under normal circumstances, be the, moral or sexual equivalent of the neutral zone. You don't see teaching them your favorite thing as a bad thing. But again, I am principled in my objections. I think that children should effectively be the human equivalent of the neutral zone. If they're below the age of pubescence and they're below the age of reason, don't discuss any major religious, spiritual, philosophical, or sexual subject matter with them. Period. Now, if they find it on their own and they come to you with questions, that is one thing entirely. But if they find it on their own and don't come to you with questions and are just being, edgy little experimental irreverent shit like children are wont to do, you don't get to lecture them either, frankly. Moving on.
Throwing opportunity for another Bud Light style anti-LGBTQ boycott, right-wing content creators started drumming up support against Call of Duty. Right-wing internet persona Tim Pool called the game Call of Groomers, claiming it's reasonable to say Call of Duty is run by pedophiles. Vegas have since echoed the allegation, claiming they are uninstalling the game, deleting the Battle.net account, and mad that they can't play Call of Duty.
Okay, one, Tim Pool is barely ever considered. He's barely even remotely considered centrist, let alone right wing. Tim Pool is one of the most milquetoast motherfuckers on the entire internet. Two, I don't agree that having this kind of moral freakout necessarily means that Call of Duty is run by pedos. But again, I have to ask the question. If you consider the phrase "leave children alone" to be anti-LGBT, what does that say about your activism and its possible intentions? Like, I get the "we will convert your children" song was supposed to be satirical, but the satire card can only cover your ass so long if you go right ahead and start doing it. Like, if you actively treat gender affirming healthcare, quote unquote, in exactly the same moral fervor that tradcons from yesteryear used to believe that gay conversion therapy was a moral and virtuous thing to subject children to, then I have to ask myself the question, how much does the satire card cover your ass here? And if the phrase "leave children alone" somehow counts as anti-LGBT, what does that say about the way you're targeting, or at least the way you're engaging with, children? That doesn't mean you're actively pedophiles, but it could very easily mean that you think children must be indoctrinated into your ideology before they reach the age of reason, because otherwise they wouldn't become convinced of it. And even that, excluding the possibility of the whole map thing, which, is a whole nother kettle of fish, even that I would consider to be morally too far. Children should not be exposed to anyone's ideology before they reach the age where they can figure shit out for themselves. Children should only be subject to critical thinking classes and facts. Anything beyond those two things can get fucked. Because you're not supposed to be teaching them what to think. You're supposed to be teaching them how to think for themselves. And anything that biases their calculations on that can frankly be fucked in the ass. Moving on.
I play the new Modern Warfare 2 regularly. I guess that has to change. One right winger tweeted over 3.8 thousand likes. Thoughts? We floodlighting these bitches? I got nothing to that.
Yeah, that's just.
It's stupid, but also kind of funny.
Yeah, it's basically a little bit above the average internet banter.
Okay. Let me read these two comments from Angel that you mentioned, and it's also different when you add in sex acts or fetishes, like when they say being anti-X kink is anti-LGBT. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Again, Dragon Turtle, I wouldn't mind if it was done in the context of sexual education. Like, I wouldn't mind if there was a module on here are some common sexual fetishes in a sex ed class. Anywhere else, and it's fucking cancer. But in the context of a sex ed class, it's fine. But I think you were referring specifically to the part where I said, showing kids Paranorman was basically equivalent to showing them Snow White. To which I would agree. If you're going to show any kind of sexuality, quote unquote, to kids, it should be in the context of romance and only in the context of romance if they're below the age of pubescence. Which, again, doesn't preclude the possibility that they might find that shit on their own and be edgy little shits, because children are going to do that. But to which I would say, don't you dare try and censor or keep them from bullshit. But certainly don't force it on them or treat it like a neutral subject matter.
Moving up?
Yeah, moving on.
Okay, I'm going to read this last one and then we'll move on. Draco, I wouldn't even put it there unless there was some kind of potential health risk involved in that. Why would it be in sex ed otherwise? I mean,
well, because the subject matter is sexual education, and one of the things about education is, for lack of a better word, cultural diversity. So, if you're educating kids on sex in a sex ed class, telling them, oh, by the way, here are some common fetishes, or here is how sexuality can be expressed in a non-missionary sort of way, is just it's the equivalent of saying, like, here are some different kinds of architecture in a art class or a history class, or hell, imagine a sort of cross curriculum thing where kids cover a certain subject in history class and then they go to a foods class where they talk about different foods from a given culture. It's basically like that. It's, we're here to educate you about sex, so here are some quirks of sexuality would be how I would basically spin it. But like I said, anywhere else and it's cancer and everyone should be fucking fired, if not put on some kind of registry. But in a sex ed class, if you wanna do a unit on sexual fetishes, who gives a fuck? It makes sense. It is a kind of education about sex, so who gives a fuck?
I got nothing to say. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. Now again, I would add the asterisk of don't try to force children to or don't try to force the students to engage in these sex acts or frame them as a virtuous thing. Describe them descriptively, just like you would any other subject matter.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks all. But then it suddenly becomes a very different class from what I understand. Sex ed is usually filtering into important stuff they need to know to avoid things like STDs and unwanted pregnancies. I assume it's the word he's fighting.
See, the thing is, given how important sexuality is to human beings, the fact that we don't at least broaden it enough to actually discuss sexuality in a sex ed class does kind of bug me. It's kind of like if you had a sex ed class and you only ever talked about abstinence or the things that could go wrong in sex. That would also be a bit weird to me. you're here to discuss a subject matter, so discuss a subject matter in an actual adult, meaningful, mostly neutral. Basically, this is the kind of class where I would chalk it up to kids should know at least some of this stuff so that they don't get blindsided by the way the world works. In the same way as I really wish we focused in, especially post-second, like in high school math classes, I wish we taught kids how to like balance budgets and do their own taxes or something like that, things they might actually use that would actually be meaningful information to them. Because the fact that we don't teach them, especially in high school, the fact that we don't teach kids anything practical pisses me right the fuck off. Anyway, moving on.
Okay. Fucking people shoot fireworks.
Oh, that's what I thought someone was banging on your door there for a second.
No, it's a very different sound.
I mean, it is like a week or so before the 4th of July, so I at least give them a little bit of credit here. It's not like before when they would just randomly set them off in fucking May or something.
Okay. Alright, this is the last thing I'm gonna read. This is gonna be the last time I'm gonna read, then hopefully move back to the article. But why would it be taught in school? Then how would one decide what is and is not to be included? Hold on. I do definitely agree that we need more of a focus on practical education, that, and then people dip their toes in and explore options for them to pursue further.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, on this subject matter, I think it would benefit both the older generations and the younger generations to have a internet literacy, like an internet competency course, because the fact that the powers that be know jack shit nothing about the way the internet works and constantly get blindsided by new memes or new quirks of the internet to the point that they can be sold the idea that it's some kind of moralistically hysterical bullshit does bug me. Now, granted, most kids, especially kids raised now, are probably going to be just kind of inherently internet competent, but it wouldn't be entirely stupid to start, because the internet is such a major part of human society now. It wouldn't, like, we used to have like keyboarding and how to use like Microsoft Excel type classes in my high school. So why the fuck don't we uh give kids a rundown of here's stuff you might uh expect to find on the internet? Especially, and honestly, I think this would be a class that would more benefit teachers, because it would allow them to keep the fuck in touch with the youth culture and not be absolutely blindsided by every little fucking thing. Like, I wonder how many high school teachers bought the lie that Kekistan was some horribly fascist nonsense back in 2017. Well, if they were expected to have at least some like internet cultural competency, they wouldn't have bought that shit.
Okay. It's very unlikely that a Call of Duty boycott would succeed in changing Activision Blizzard's mind, as the franchise is simply too large to be moved by angry right-wing nutjobs. Last year's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 had the best-selling opening weekend in Call of Duty history. And the multiplayer shooter quickly became 2022's best-selling gun in the U.S., even though the game's player count plummeted dramatically over the past year. A new Call of Duty installment is reportedly right around the corner. New release is sure to reinvigorate sales regardless of any right-wingers who uninstall the game. Anything
Sorry, I got distracted by the chat again.
back? Very unlikely that a Call of Duty boycott would succeed in changing Activision Blizzard's mind, as the franchise is simply too large to be moved by angry right-wing nutjobs. Last year's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 had the best-selling opening weekend in Call of Duty history, and the multiplayer shooter quickly became 2022's best-selling game in the U.S.
Funny how this logic doesn't apply to Hogwarts, or didn't apply to Hogwarts Legacy when it was angry left-wing nutjobs. Or actually, no. Fuck that. I revoke social justice's right to be considered part of the left wing. I am a left winger, and I fucking hate social justice. So no, I'm not gonna smear the whole left with this bullshit. It's funny how this didn't apply to angry social justice nut jobs when it was Hogwarts Legacy instead of Call of Duty. But oh, we've presaged, we've pre-declared that that no even ostensibly right-wing backlash could possibly matter, and no ostensibly left-wing backlash could possibly not matter. So there. Also, and that is the other thing. Speaking of tidying up our terms here a little bit, it sure as shit wasn't only right-wingers that boycotted Call of Duty over this nonsense, because most people on the ground in the libertarian part of the political spectrum, i.e. the bottom half of it, whether they be left wing, right wing, or center wing, or whatever the fuck, didn't have any problems with Nick Merckx's statement. In fact, if anything, they encouraged Nick Merckx's statement, because to everyone except for social justice whack jobs, hey, kids should be a neutral zone, leave the fucking kids alone, isn't a controversial or even could never even potentially be an offensive statement. The only other people that I could see being offended by the idea of kids as the neutral zone are religious fundamentalists. And frankly, they can get fucked too. I don't support the idea of indoctrinating children into any ideology, whether it be secular or religious. Again, if they're prepubescent, if they're below the age of reason, children are the fucking neutral zone, and I will die on that hill if I have to.
Okay. We are stuck with the tricolor evangelicals, I guess. You get the leftist comments out, you get the fascists, and they aren't even like me.
Yeah, the whole dichotomy of left versus right never really made much sense to begin with, but makes even less sense now, because when you consider that Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile literally proposed fascism as perfected socialism, calling fascism the right-wing equivalent of communism is even a little bit skewed. Plus, that leaves both classical liberalism, social democracy, and libertarianism all in the fucking center somewhere, which I guess is the only argument I could make for let fascism be called right wing, because then we can make the argument of fuck both extremes. Let's just stick to the downward facing middle. And I will stress the downward facing middle, because to me the important thing isn't the left versus right dichotomy, it's the libertarian versus authoritarian dichotomy. I want I want a world where the entire top of the political compass is completely irrelevant. That's my ideal world. One in which um, we still record the top half of the political compass for efficiency's sake, but no one could be meaningfully found there. That's my win state. Because I don't care if you're extremely far to the left or extremely far to the right, as long as you're in the libertarian half of the spectrum. Because then you're probably gonna at least be marginally sane. I would also like to lop off the last 3 rows or so of the bottom half of the political compass to prevent anarchism, but baby steps. If we could at least get to the part where we chop the top half of the political compass off, that would at least be a good step one. Then we can nuke the anarchists.
Okay. Again, I will read this Dragon Troll and then we gotta move on. I have an objective system that actually codifies right versus left, and you mention it later if you want, but the concept isn't BS, just how people use it. Ready?
Yeah, no, I get why left versus right is a meaningful distinction nominally. It's just, to me, I think the up versus down axis is more important than the left versus right axis, because you'll get far to the right libertarians and far to the left social democrats who are actually social democrats saying fuck everyone above me on the political compass, but we on the far fringes of the libertarian side can get along just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yep.
It's very unlikely that a Call of Duty boycott would succeed in changing Activision's mind. Oh, no, wait, did I agree though? Yeah, I did. Sorry.
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Even though the game's player count has plummeted dramatically over the past year, a new Call of Duty installment is reportedly right around the corner. A new release is sure to reinvigorate sales, regardless of any rightness will install the game.
Well, see, I don't think it's gonna matter, because much like with the Bud Light thing, if it were just a bad piece of marketing, if it were just a backlash against a particular game, that would be one thing. But the company came right out and put their foot in it, just like with the Bud Light thing. If Bud Light had handled the people's dislike of the Dylan Mulvaney advert well, they could have just moved on and no one would have given a shit. But instead, they sent out the clip of the ad exec saying our customer base are fratty, douchey, sport loving rednecks, and we need to hold out for a better class of people, basically. And that was what really kicked the Bud Light boycott into high gear. And the same thing is true here. It's not a backlash against the quality or lack thereof of the product of Call of Duty. It's, holy shit, someone said the incredibly, milquetoast thing of children should be the fucking neutral zone, and Activision Blizzard went out of their way to disagree and disavow and punish the guy who said that incredibly milquetoast, obviously true thing. So, quality or no freaking quality, I think this is going to be a hard line for a lot of the at least aware Call of Duty fan base. I mean, you might get people in the Call of Duty fan base who weren't privy to this drama, and they will probably remain unaffected. Just like only about 30% of Bud Light's customer base vanished over the whole ad exec thing. But all of the people who are aware of this nonsense are now backlashing against you. And again, frankly, the only people who care, who would be opposed to the idea of let's leave the children alone, are religious fundamentalists who who assert their right to indoctrinate their children, or social justice fundamentalists who assert their right to co-opt education and indoctrinate children. So basically, this isn't even a left versus right thing. This is a everyone not in favor of indoctrinating children versus everyone who is in favor of indoctrinating children thing. Or people in the middle who special plead like a motherfucker. Like the tradcons who see a problem with this but wouldn't see a problem with religious schools. Fucking hypocritical dickheads. But there are those of us in the actual principled center going, I don't care if it's religious indoctrination or social justice indoctrination, knock it the fuck off. And I will beat that drum until I am dead. Until I have no more heartbeats to beat with.
Islanders likely have an uphill battle if they want to make Call of Duty case, in no small part because Activision Blizzard has traditionally marketed its games to its LGBTQ players. What?
When? Also, I am an LGBT gamer, and I don't support the idea of indoctrinating kids. Again, this isn't an LGBT versus straight thing. This is a people not in favor of indoctrinating children versus people who are thing, and or people who are special pleading motherfuckers who don't see a problem with indoctrination when they do it, which is a thing. I do need to it does bear repeating that those people do exist. The people who for some reason would see a problem with this but wouldn't see a problem with religious bullshit or actual straight propaganda. But there are also those of us in the middle here going, I don't want straight propaganda, I don't want gay propaganda, I don't want any propaganda, children of the neutral zone.
Okay. Call of Duty has taken numerous steps over the years to include LGBTQ players, from non-binary player character options to in-game LGBTQ banners in a game about war.
Again, I hate to burst this bubble, but several of the people who are LGBTQ are gonna agree with Nick Merckx on this. Because whether the activists want to admit it or not, to be gay is not synonymous with wanting to do nasty things to children, either literally or in the abstract. It took us 30 freaking years to get that through people's heads, and now the activist wing and the academic ideological wing want to undo that progress for some fucking reason. But I'm still sitting here with my, being gayer than rainbow sherbet with rainbow sprinkles, whole thing. And, yeah, children of the neutral zone, children shouldn't be taught about sex until they're at least pubescent. Fuck off.
No?
Yep, moving on.
Alright. Meanwhile, over at Blizzard, Overwatch 2 has taken increased steps to expand representation for queer players. This is a recent Pride event that offers LGBTQ flag-themed banners, as well as a short story that confronts as far as lesbian sexuality.
Again, Mary Sue, serious question. Do you actually believe that LGBT is synonymous with MAP advocacy?
I also
Because
well,
Go ahead.
I also want to point out is that Overwatch 2 kind of fell to a real wayside in terms of public eye, and not a lot of people talk about it. And most of the stuff, sorry, Charlie Horse.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie,
you bit my finger. Well,
right, sorry. Where was I? Yeah, like
Overwatch.
Yeah,
2.
not a lot of people talk about it these days, and it's kind of sad because it had a lot of potential. I was actually one of the first people that was playing it when it was coming out. I enjoyed it. I played Reinhardt mostly. There's a big knife in the next suit thing. And the war was pretty good. I remember a lot of people kind of fell off it because there wasn't a campaign, like a story mode. And I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like there was a story mode there.
Mm.
There should have been. But my point being is this, I'll be fully honest, this whole thing, just it doesn't feel genuine. It feels like cash grab.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I'm speaking from the perspective of being uh, of a straight man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it feels.
I am shielding him with my gay card though, so he's free to talk about it, and anyone else can take, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with my ass.
Right. Oh, what's that? I'm sorry. I had to take my fan out the window because the asshole was shooting fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, but it just when they do this LGBTQ thing, it never feels like it's genuine. It literally feels like they're just pandering.
Well, and here's the other half of it. They will literally conflate their definition of what it is to be LGBT with every single person who's ever been LGBT in such a way that if you are a gay person or a bisexual person or a lesbian or whatever who has a problem with any of their ideological or moralistic suppositions, they will actively say you're not really gay, you've internalized homophobia, you've internalized straightness, you've internalized your own oppression, yada yada. Basically, the idea of agree with our ideological conception of you, or you secretly hate yourself and have Stockholm syndrome. And I have to wonder if you actually consider your abstraction of what it is to be gay more important than the actual people who happen to be gay, then you don't actually have empathy with IRL real world LGBT people. You have a desire to consume all LGBT people under the auspices of your idea of what they should be like. Because if you can lose your identity by not ideologically conforming to what other people think you should be, that is not a compassionate or empathetic position. That is a academically moralistic and authoritarian position. And it doesn't matter whether it's the tradcons saying you're born in hell for being this way, or it's the social justice warriors saying you secretly hate yourself for disagreeing with us. My position is they can get fucked. My choices are my choices, and if you take issue with them, make a fucking argument or GTFO.
Grand Turtle asked a very important question. Jones, anyone has a son of a mother? I'm sorry. God damn it, my leg.
Yeah, at least yours is temporary. Walk it off.
I'm trying to, but I can't get up. Um,
Yeah, welcome to my world. At least you're only visiting.
okay. Anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with my ass. I have to ask: is that a threat or an invitation, Dalton?
Depends on how cute they are, honestly.
All right. Shit. Okay. Every time I try to bend my leg and stand up, it fucking hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, it's not as if the larger gaming community supports making like comments. These comments remain highly unpopular outside of the right-wing Twitter world.
Um. Uh. What are what exactly are you defining the right wing as, Mary Sue? Because I am a classically liberal in principle, socially democratic in terms of policy, gay person who is also a uh, person who was born with spastic diaplegic cerebral palsy and who happens to be a polytheistic occultist. Like, I am the only minority card I don't have is black, and yeah, my ex-boyfriend actually was. So clearly I don't have any racial biases. So there's that. But my point is, I am about as far as you can. I'm about as far as you can get from being right wing, and I don't have. I don't. Not only don't I have a problem with what Nick Merck said, I'm about this close to Chad yesing it. And I know Brainstormer is like the most milquetoast, like straight up the middle centrist you can find, and he also doesn't have a problem with it. So, what exactly is your definition of right wing, Mary Sue? Because the phrase "any activist should leave children alone" that's the real issue. One, doesn't specifically target the LGBT community. Two, is appealing to literally anyone who doesn't want to indoctrinate kids, which includes everyone pretty much except for fundamentalist SJWs who want to indoctrinate children into the ideology of social justice, and fundamentalist religious people of all stripes who want to have carte blanche to indoctrinate children into various religious cults. So yeah, there is literally no one left, right, center, or sideways who doesn't want to indoctrinate children who wouldn't support this statement. Mm-hmm.
Okay. People will complain that he's being canceled, but at the end of the day, no one is forcing him to do stuff like this. They're going to face consequences. One r/James Redditor to commented to over 200 upvotes. They literally stating gay people shouldn't be acknowledged in society and getting pressed when $1 million companies don't want to associate themselves with you.
Okay, and again, let's flip the script and rewind the tape. Let's say it's an alternate universe version of the 90s where the internet happened about 20 years earlier and therefore is more developed back then. Let's say it's the fundamentalist tradcons of yesteryear, pushing gay conversion therapy onto kids and talking about biblical marriage and talking about monogamy and abstinence and all that shit. Imagine there was an abstinence pride movement in like the 90s. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Christopher Hitchens said, "Leave children alone, let them express themselves." That's the real issue. Would that be a justifiable thing? Because I'm betting that 90% of the people who consider themselves of the social justice leaning in today's day and age would be totally on Hitch's side on that. Or is that also haram because we deserve to have the ability to turn children into child soldiers for our ideology? Because that's the thing. We're not disagreeing that things should have consequences, but we have to wonder, and I'm going to speak to you in terms that you'll understand, Mary Sue. When it's corporations and academies and governments trying to ban and boycott people, and on the ground people trying to buoy them up, who is in the moral right in this situation? Because I know in literally every other circumstance, Mary Sue, you would be saying it is those in power who punch down that are automatically the bad guys, and those on in the grassroots that punch up that are automatically the good guys. So why is it that Nick Merckx can say a extremely neutral thing and be boycotted from hell and back by the corporate zeitgeist, and that is just organic consequences. But the castrate the what do you call it? Sterilization of Alan Turing was a human travesty. And I'm not saying that the sterilization of Alan Turing wasn't a humanitarian travesty. I'm saying that if the rules apply, they apply to everyone. In which case, fuck the corporations, fuck the academy, and fuck the police is the rule that was set down during the goth movement and punk movement of the 90s era, when it was the Tradcons and the Satanic Panic in power. Well, if that be the case, then fuck the corporations, fuck the academy, and fuck the police should still be the rule when it's, Blizzard taking it out of Nick Merck's ass and everyone on the ground rushing to support him. And by the way, you don't have to say this, just keep it to yourself, is exactly the kind of argument that used to be used to stymie free speech. It's literally the argument of, you can be gay, just don't ever mention it, that used to get thrown around by the Tradcons. Like, just keep it entirely in the public sphere and never express it openly or treat it like a neutral thing. That was literally the argument back in the day. And yet Nick Merck says ideologues should leave children alone, and your response is, you can think that, just keep it to yourself, and you think you're the good guy in this. Oops.
Yeah. Okay, so just for time purposes, and also I kind of want to be done with the subject for now. Because I feel like
we'll push the cherry on the sundae of this subject to next week. And yes, Dragon Turtle, if you've been keeping an eye on the Archcast the last couple of weeks, it is the Call of Groomers is a callback to Gamergate article that Arch and V were covering in, I want to say, the last Archcast, but it might have been the one before that. Because it was the only one I could find that was worse than the Mary Sue.
Alright, so yeah, we're gonna move on to, and because the New York Times has that stupid shit that I have to sign up for a free week to view an article, we're going to use the archive version.
Mm-hmm.
And again, everything, don't send me everything this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because like we said, Brainstormer was busy basically being Job last week. So I was the one keeping the show in some kind of order.
Yeah. Alright, the New York, yeah, so this originally from the New York Times. A man reimagining Disney classics for today's world. Sean Bailey is in charge of live action remakes of films like The Little Mermaid. It's a job that puts him in the middle of a partisan divide. This is written by Brooks Barnes, published June 4th, 2023.
The big thing about this is, my issue with the Disney remakes is a quality one, because there's nothing stopping you. You have all the resources to replicate what the original movies did in live action, and for some reason you just don't. Like for example, compare the Sunrise song in the Lion King animated version to the Sunrise song in the live action version. The big thing that I noticed in the live action Lion King is the colors are muted by comparison to the animated one. And I guess if you were using like real world footage, that might be an issue. But number one, color correction and filters have been a thing forever in cinema. And two, 90% of the movie is computer generated anyway, so would it have killed you to actually replicate the color scheme of the animated one as well? And the same goes for like Beauty and the Beast or any of the other live action remakes as well. Like you have the resources to make the color schemes match up and the vibrancy and the character designs match up, and yet you for some reason choose to make them worse. That's the issue I take with it. Because it's not a lack of resources, and if it's not a lack of resources, the only problem therefore must be your creativity. And if your creativity is a problem, then maybe you shouldn't be in this business that requires creativity.
I thought you had more to say, so.
Hmm?
I thought you had more to say.
No, go ahead.
All right. For more than a decade, Sean Bailey has run. No, it would be ran, not run.
No, it should be run.
No, well, okay, it's just how the sentence is formed. It would be for more than a decade, Sean Bailey has ran Disney's animated film reimagining factory. So
I honestly, it should. Honestly, I think it works either way. Like if you were to ask me to like run an intro, or
well,
or or or
here-
I would say to you like run the intro. I think that's
okay, but ran is more in past tense, which I think is what is meant here. Run is more, I guess. Okay, if we're going here, is more of a present tense than past tense.
well. I
Depending on
see. I
the
see. I don't know because it's not in the literal sense of run. It's more akin to something like when we refer to like the run of a comic, or something like that.
I still think it should be ran, then run, even in the context of this.
But hang on, because this is past participle considering that the word has is there. So, uh, run, ran, has run. So yeah, it's right.
I know it's a little. I'm a grammar guy, okay?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Even being grammar OCD, this would be past participle because have, has, or had is there. So it's he runs, he has run, he ran, and he has run.
Okay, fine. What? Not. I'm not. We're not.
Grammar OCD. Step away from the grammar OCD abyss, everyone.
Okay, so we're gonna move past it. I don't want to spend like an hour on this. So yeah, okay. Let me reread that. More than a decade, Sean Bailey has run Disney's animated film reimagining factory with quiet, yeah, that's quiet efficiency and superhero sized results. Live action Aladdin collected 1.1 billion at the box office. The photorealistic The Lion King took in 1.7 billion. A live action Beauty and the Beast delivered 1.3 million. Disney likes the cash. The company also uses the Bailey's remake operation as crucial to remaining relevant. Disney's animated classics are treasured by fans. Most showcase ideas from another era, especially when it comes to gender roles. The pretty girls and things might work. Oh, okay.
Again, fuck your feminist ideology. The actual gender roles on the ground have not changed a whit. The only thing that's changed is your moralistic and ideological supposition. And frankly, the biggest strength of the Disney Renaissance was it was capable of either ignoring the TradCon pearl clutchers at the time, or in the case of Hunchback of Notre Dame, actually lambasting them a little bit by making them the villains.
Was Anastasia part of Disney at that time?
No, that's Don Bluth. He was an animator who worked with Disney for a while, but he left over creative differences, and so a lot of his movies still have that kind of Disney-esque vibe to them. But I don't think they're part of the Disney canon.
Okay, so I'm gonna be fully honest. I've not seen the entirety of Anastasia. I've seen some of it. I've never gotten to finish it. Life has happened and stuff. So
you've never finished the Don Bluth Anastasia?
Nope. I even when I had tapes, I would see trailers for it.
Oh, VHS tapes! How I miss you.
Yeah. But yeah, I have never gotten to finish that movie. I know Dark in the Night. In the Dark of the Night song that's in that movie.
Dark of the night, he will find her. In the dark of the night, terror comes through.
By the way, was the villain supposed to be Rasputin?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I figured. Anyway, sorry, that was a weird tangent there. But
yeah, the other song I remember from that movie is "Once Upon a December," which was the lullaby her grandma used to sing her in the movie.
I miss those days.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, where were we? I'm sorry, we got so far. You were speaking about Disney Renaissance and stuff.
Oh yeah, the thing about the changing gender role attitudes bullshit is on the ground gender roles actually haven't changed all that much. The only difference is in the halls of academia and the halls of corporate officialdom, they've changed because of feminist activism. But back in the day, the biggest strength of the Disney Renaissance was either outright ignoring the moralizing pearl clutchers of the day, and being okay with including things like a little bit of sexuality, especially among the villains, or in the case of Judge Claude Frollo in Hunchback of Notre Dame, actively making the TradCon position the villain position, resulting in Hellfire, one of the greatest Disney villain songs in history. Still not quite as good as Poor Unfortunate Souls, mind you, or Friends on the Other Side, but it's up there. Why they didn't give Jafar a villain song, I'll never know. I mean, they kind of did in the direct-to-video sequel when he had the only second-rate song, but they didn't get.
Sorry, I was going to revise Prince Ali. Saying.
Yeah, he had a reprise of Prince Ali, but that's not his song, really.
Yeah, I recognize that, but
like Poor Unfortunate Souls is Ursula's song. Friends on the Other Side is Facilier's song. Hellfire is Frollo's song, and so on. But Jafar never got his own song. Even Radcliffe from Pocahontas got Mine, 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 and Savages. He actually got 2 villain songs.
Although I will admit that Savages is somewhat of a duet.
Well, yeah, because it's the We're Going to War song. But yeah, it is in terms of like its sinisterness, it's probably closer to an outright villain song than Mine, Mine, Mine is. Although technically that was that was a villain song for Radcliffe. So yeah, Radcliffe actually got 2 villain songs, and Jafar didn't even get 1. Goddamn.
Okay. Anyway, shall we move on?
Yeah. Now I have a bunch of Disney villain songs stuck in my head. Moving on.
The reimagining, as Mr. Bailey refers to his remakes, find ways to make Disney stories less retrograde. His heroines are empowered and his casting emphasizes diversity. A live-action Snow White, set for release next year, stars the Latina actress Rachel Ziegler. Again, if I say names wrong, I'm so sorry. I don't do names.
He's not good at anyone's names.
As the princess known as the fairest of them all, Yara Shahidi played Tinkerbell in the recent Peter Pan and Wendy, making her the first Black woman to portray the character on screen.
Okay, not to be an asshole here, but I'm gonna be an asshole here anyway. The thing about Snow White being played by a Latina is, what is her name?
Rachel Ziegler, I believe.
No, not the actress's name, the character's name.
Snow White.
And why is she called that?
She's the fairest of them all.
No.
Hmm?
If you remember the actual rhyme that the mirror says, skin white as snow, hair black as ebony, meaning that her skin is supposed to be as white as the snow. Do you see the problem, Disney? You casted a character who's like I don't give a fuck about race on the best of days, but the character's race is actually fucking in her name.
It was a Nickelodeon version of, I think it was Nickelodeon, or Paramount, of Snow White, like in the early 2010s. What was it called? I can't. What? Wait. You know what I'm talking about? Like there was a.
I remember there was an all black version of Cinderella back in the day, but I don't remember an all black version of Snow White.
No, I'm not talking black. I'm just talking like in 2010 there was like this really, I think it's good. Like I think it was a Paramount version of Snow White.
The one that had Charlize Theron as the evil queen and Kristen Stewart as Snow White. That one's called Snow White and the Huntsman. It had Chris Hemsworth as the Huntsman.
Not that one.
The only other one I can think of that came out around that time is Mirror Mirror, that was like the comedy spoof version.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about.
Okay. Just so I wasn't like there might have been a third version of Snow White that I was completely fucking blanking on, but yeah.
I can't remember the name. I thought it had Snow White in it. Yeah, Mirror Mirror.
Yeah, it's called Mirror Mirror. It was like a fairy tale spoof-ish thing.
I enjoyed it.
They actually came out in the same month, Snow White and the Huntsman and Mirror Mirror. And it was kind of bizarre that both of them came out around the same time. Anyway, point being, not to be a complete dickhead here, but the character is supposed to have skin as white as snow, and you casted a Latina.
Honestly, you legitimately could have casted an albino actress.
No, they couldn't, because her hair has to be black as ebony.
I'm just saying, like, okay, I still think that would be good. That even the tiniest detail like that, which I realize would be a big thing for you,
like,
I think it would be interesting at least because it works more with her name.
I mean, and there's nothing stopping them from giving her a black wig as well. So there's
Yeah,
that. But like,
but
but like, yeah, that would at least be more in keeping with the character than character literally named for her skin color. We're gonna cast a Latina
I also think it's kind of doing a disservice to the actress herself. That might be the only reason she's casted.
to spite the people who want the character to resemble the character.
Yeah, it's doing a disservice to the actress who, the possibility that she was only hired on because of that factor.
She's literally a diversity hire.
Yeah,
And I feel the same way about Halle Bailey, not because she didn't do a good job as Ariel, but because she's always going to be remembered as the Black Little Mermaid now.
yeah, it sucks because, like, again, I don't. I'm sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. Yeah, it sucks for like all these actors and actresses that are getting hired into these roles because of studio executives making these like really these decisions that are effectively just not taking account to the merit of those actors and stuff.
Yeah,
Often,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I realize often it's never even lately. It usually an actor isn't hired because of merit. Usually,
Yeah,
but
it's either nepotism, like the director, or it's moral nepotism, like with all the social justice pandering.
yeah, but again, it just sucks because honestly, I legitimately from things I've seen like trailers and stuff, other live action things, or they just cast the big name actors all the fucking time. You know,
Well, yeah, they never really do give an unknown actor a chance, do they?
are they? But my
But,
point,
go ahead.
just to
Sorry.
kind of my point to you, it's just like it is very much like it's damaging the I guess I wouldn't say career. I don't want to say career, but it is damaging the brand of those actors.
It's also, I imagine, fairly damaging to their self-esteem. It reminds me of when we did the article talking about the recent Marvel actors, the ones that played Kamala Khan and America Chavez in the MCU, talking about how they felt the pressure to speak on the behalf of every Latino or Islamic uh, person out there, and it's like I feel bad for them because they were told that, and they're young enough to accept it without question, and I can't imagine the pressure it must be to know that, or to at least think that I am here to speak for all the people who have even remotely resembled me throughout history. Like,
Yeah, I just I don't. I really don't.
that's gotta do a number on. That's either got to inflate your ego to ludicrous degrees if you have no self awareness, or utterly cripple your ego if you have any degree of self awareness at all, and make you feel unworthy of every role you get, which is actually a little worse fundamentally.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else to see that or
No, go ahead.
okay? We want to reflect the world as it exists. Instead, the world deal and business strategy has increasingly put Disney and Mr. Bailey, a low-profile and self-effacing executive, in the middle of a very loud, very unpolite cultural fight.
Again, I don't.
Let me don't.
Go ahead. Finish the thing.
Yeah. For every person who applauds Disney, there seems to be a counterpart who complains about being force-fed wokeness.
Well, when you explicitly go out of your way to say you're doing that, yes, that is a bit of a problem. But more to the point, this whole reflecting the world as it exists thing, like unironically, fairy tales are about, apart from, on some level they actually happened and fairies actually exist and all, like, my usual soapbox of fairy tales aren't supposed to be archetypical, they're supposed to be reflective of things that actually happened on some level. But, whatever. Trying to take something as ancient and archetypical by its very nature as a fairy tale and turn it into a modernist piece of art inherently ruins it. Especially because, and I don't want to be this asshole, but the fairy tales that Disney is most famous for adapting come in no small part from continental Europe, specifically Germany and France, or what is now Germany and what is now France, because neither country really existed at the time. At one point, it was all broadly grouped under the heading of Gaul, but that's neither here nor there. So it's not just race swapping characters that already exist or race swapping characters from existing stories. It's why the fuck don't you just tell a Mesoamerican story or a Mexican story or a Latino story? Or
Sorry, I have to bring up examples. I haven't watched them because they didn't seem interesting to me.
yeah, go ahead.
Coco, that doesn't taste hard, but what was the one that came out recently? I can't remember his name. With the song "We Don't Talk About Bruno,"
What the fuck is that called? It's gonna bug me.
I gotta look this up because it's gonna bug me too.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm gonna hear it, and I'm gonna hate myself for not fucking knowing it off the top of my head. It's not Moana. That was years ago. It's fucking, because that was the
Encanto.
Encanto. There we go. I do somewhat hold it against you for not watching Coco, because Coco is fucking amazing.
I just saw the trailers, man. It just didn't grab me, you know.
And let the record show that he's a Hispanic dude.
Yeah, something. Honestly, I see it as an inferior copy of the Book of Life. I'll be honest.
Well, I mean, in a way, yes. I see it more as two movies about the same subject matter that came out around the same time.
I still think Book of Life is better. I'll be honest.
Well, I mean, it's Guillermo del frickin' Toro. What's not to love about Guillermo del frickin' Toro? But there isn't such a massive quality gulf between Coco and Book of Life that it's noticeable to me. And I honestly,
I think it's just. Sorry.
I'm just happy that we're getting some stories about Day of the los Muertos, because Day of the los Muertos is freaking awesome.
You know, I actually found this out like not too long ago, but apparently it wasn't a big festival until when Spectre came out in its opening scene, and that Mexican people started to actually make that a big thing.
I sort of call bullshit on that.
About something like that, so.
Because I remember the movie Scooby-Doo Monster of Mexico when I was a kid, and it was also speaking of things that referenced Day de los Muertos when I was a kid. If you remember Paco from Jackie Chan Adventures, there was a Halloween related episode that also referenced Day of the Dead, because as much as people get somewhat offended when you say Day of the Dead is basically Mexican Halloween, it is like 3 days apart from Halloween, and they're both born of the same attempt by the church to co-opt Samhain and other like death-oriented festivals.
Right.
So
So I think we'll bring this up as we go on, but okay. So SoCal Gaming. You guys seen the new racist Disney show that is a Mexican show that gets Spanish wrong, and then when people corrected her grammar, she said that Spanish isn't the original language of the people of Latin America, and that the Spanish colonizers pushed it onto the Mexicans. Hoy Primos is the show I'm talking about, and the writer's name is City. The show takes place in Earthquake City, which basically is not that good considering in recent history how many people in Mexico died from earthquakes.
I heard about the show that did that. I didn't know it was a Disney show.
To I just didn't. I don't know. I don't think we're just gonna cover it because I don't think it's really.
Yeah, I don't. The only thing that's vaguely Hispanic that I want to talk about if it comes up pop culture wise is basically anything that Guillermo del Toro does, for he is awesome.
Yeah.
And or season 2 of Trece, because Trece is fucking awesome.
No, Trece is Filipino.
I know, but it's still rooted in very Hispanic culture, so it counts.
Filipino is more. I think it's in that weird kind of thing of like it's. Well, the Philippines. Okay, hold on.
It was conquered by the Spanish, and therefore Spanish culture had a very strong influence on it in the same way it did with the Mesoamerican countries and the conquistadors. So, like, I know that Filipino culture and Mesoamerican culture aren't the same. I'm not that much of an idiot, but they're both rooted in fucking Spanish culture.
The Philippines are in Southeast Asia. So.
Yes, and they were conquered by the Spanish at one point.
Huh.
Because back in the day, when everybody was conquering everybody else, the Spanish had colonies too.
No, I know that. I just assumed they were more in like the West. Huh. Learn something new every day.
But point being, the next time we talk about Spanish shit, it's probably either going to be something relating to Del Toro or it's going to be Trece season 2, because they need to make a Trece season 2. God damn it, Trece is awesome.
Or Zorro. Never forget Zorro.
I don't have quite as strong a connection to Zorro, but we'll cover Zorro if you want to cover Zorro.
Post fucking classic. How the no, we're not. Not gonna do that. Not doing that. You disappoint me immensely.
Like I like Antonio Banderas, but Zorro was never what I remember seeing him in. I remember seeing him mostly in Spy Kids.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about Zorro overall. You realize Zorro has existed since like the 20s. Right?
Yes, I know. He's basically Spanish Lone Ranger, but
old time movies, Ahsoka. The Pope classic hero, the Mexican revolutionary hero.
Yeah, but he never grabbed me, and neither did Antonio's take on the character. I like Puss in Boots, and I know he's is Zorro alike and everything, but yeah, I don't have a super degree of attachment to Zorro.
Anyway,
I actually have slightly more attachment to El Kabong, which was the Hanna-Barbera parody of Zorro done by Quick Draw McGraw back in the day.
Anyway, we should probably get back to this. Many companies are finding themselves in this vice. Target and Anheuser-Busch?
Anheuser-Busch.
I don't know what that is.
The company that makes Bud Light and Budweiser.
Okay. Nike, but Disney, which has a powerful impact on children as they are forming life beliefs, has been uniquely challenged in this hyper-partisan moment. Both sides of the political divide have been counting on Disney to stand with them, with movies that come from Mr. Bailey's Corner of the Magic Kingdom as prime examples.
Okay, see, this is the thing. You just phrased it as though Disney has a massive impact on children. And what people used to rely on Disney for was being fucking neutral. Being on no one's side. The problem is that Disney very evidently, like most of Hollywood, has taken a side on this point. And before you accuse me of being fucking homophobic, I am gay, so fuck off. Point being, just like before, just like in the Disney Renaissance, we expected Disney to mostly ignore all the TradCon bullshit. Now, if Disney were functioning the way Disney is supposed to function, they would be ignoring the social justice malarkey. But instead, they ignored the TradCons back during the Disney Renaissance, as they should have, but they opened wide to the social justice warriors. And therein lies the fucking problem. We rely on Disney to be a neutral space where everyone is welcome. And you've just now demonized any gay person who isn't part of the LGBT activism movement, or anyone who doesn't like morality of any kind shoved in their entertainment, of which there are many, and I dislike the TradCons too, but they are a market, so when Disney was neutral, even the hardest of the hard TradCons could learn to love Disney, and the furthest of the furthest left could learn to love Disney. But now that Disney has evidently taken a side, you've got all the people in the middle who don't like social justice but don't like the TradCons either pissed off, and you've got the TradCons pissed off. So no fucking wonder that that Disney is being seen as controversial when they fucking started it by opening up the controversy. You don't get to say something that will evidently be controversial and then absolve yourself of any controversy that happens. And you certainly don't get to be on the moral high ground. Especially because, and here's the thing, the LGBT movement doesn't speak for LGBT people. The Black Lives Matter movement doesn't speak for Black people. Whatever Hispanic equivalent of this there is doesn't speak for Spanish people, and on we go. You're conflating and confusing the academically sanctioned activists with the actual people on the ground, and most of the people on the ground don't even fucking like it or want it. So there's that. Moving on.
Alright, consider his remake of The Little Mermaid, which arrived in theaters 2 weeks ago and cost an estimated, 2 weeks from when this was published, which was about 3 weeks ago. So, 2 weeks ago and cost an estimated $375 million to make and market. If you had that much money, why the fuck did it look so bad?
This is my question. It's not even a social justice v non-social justice argument anymore. It's a quality argument. Again, if you are just remaking the animated version in live action, why don't you replicate the visuals of the animated version in live action better? Why are the colors so washed out and shitty? Why does everything look like it was rendered on a PS3? And so on we go.
I feel like it was mostly the marketing that got a lot of that money, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't the actual movie, which it should have been.
The new version scuttles problematic lyrics from the 1989 original. It's she who holds her tongue who gets the man.
Did it ever occur to you that Ursula was a villain who was trying to sell a teenage girl on losing her self-worth and her ability for self-determination in the name of getting in the name of getting what she thought she wanted. It's literally supposed to be a villainous pitch, dear. It's saying, don't worry about your self-worth. Nobody gives a fuck about that anyway. That was the whole, the thing. The other part of that lyric, the men up there don't like a lot of blabber. They think a girl who gossips is a bore, but on land it's much preferred for ladies not to say a word, and after all their wood is idle prattle for. That's the thing. It's Ursula trying to convince her, oh sure, your voice is nothing. You can give that to me and nobody will even notice. Because it's supposed to be basically a Faustian bargain with Ursula standing in for a devil-like figure. Right down to the contract.
Anyway, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest change, Haley Bailey, who is black, plays Ariel, the mermaid. Disney has long depicted the character as white, including at its theme parks.
Because it's based on a Hans Christian Andersen story, who, is from like German extraction. And the notion of the mermaid that the Little Mermaid references is a European or Mediterranean one. So, like, you could have almost gotten away with her being Greek. That probably wouldn't have made anyone blink. Although it must be said, I'm getting really fucking sick of all of these redheads not being redheads. Hashtag ginger side.
Okay, I don't know how to. Okay, support for Miss Bailey, notably from people of color, and film critics, has been offset by a torrent of racist commentary on social media and movie fan sites. Others have blasted The Little Mermaid for failing to acknowledge the horrors of slavery in the Caribbean. A few LGBTQ people have criticized Disney for hiring a straight male makeup artist for the villainous Ursula, whose look in the animated film was inspired by a drag queen.
There have been interviews with the animators from Little Mermaid, and none of them have ever confirmed that. In fact, in a recent episode of the Nostalgia Critic, he did an interview with Philo Barnhart about Little Mermaid, and he said that they based it largely on Pat Carroll, the actual original voice actress for Little Mermaid. So he was he didn't completely disavow the divine connection, but he did say he'd never heard of that until the internet got hold of it. So if that was the case, then someone should have told Philo Barnhart that. Because to the best of his knowledge, it was based on Pat Carroll, who was the voice actress for the character. And honestly, I don't know where that even came from, because every interview I've ever seen with the actual animators behind the character or the people involved in conceptualizing the character disavows that. So, the fuck. Granted, she definitely was coded gay, just like a lot of the Disney villains were, but that doesn't translate to, and therefore we need the makeup artist to also be gay.
That actually reminds me of Hook, the movie.
Yeah.
Ron Japan.
Yes.
I remember seeing the scene's commentary that apparently, no, I think it was actually one of the actors that Mr. Smee,
Smee.
And, huh?
Smee,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Hook were gay lovers. And one of the actors that actually played, that's how they played their role.
You know, it wouldn't surprise me, but based on the original Disney version, and this is the funny thing, I think Hook was the bottom.
Okay, so it's on gaming. I mean, you could also have gone away with making her African, like Egyptian, or just Moroccan.
Right, but that would have also required reframing or rejiggering the setting as well. That's why I would have just gone. This is a German fairy tale based on Hans Christian Andersen, so she should be white. Also, people have grown up with the white redheaded Ariel, so we should make her a white redhead.
Okay, I think we still got a lot more. So
Yeah,
move.
moving on.
Disney has long regarded these kinds of social media storms as tempests and teapots. Trending today, replaced by a new complaint tomorrow. In 2017, for instance, a theater in Alabama refused to play the live-action Beauty and the Beast because it contained a 3-second glimpse of two men dancing in each other's arms.
Okay, about that, about the whole LeFou thing, because here's me once again playing filthy centrist here. While that was stupid, it wasn't stupid for the reason of Gurma homophobia. It was stupid because LeFou has been gay this whole time, and this is the thing. It shouldn't have been focused on by the marketing either, because again, LeFou has had a man crush on Gaston since the original 1991 version, and I refuse anyone who and I refute and refuse anyone who didn't who refuses to acknowledge that the man had a guy crush you could see from space in the original. So Disney doesn't get bonus points for coming out and saying it this time, because frankly, LeFou has always been gay and he's always had a man crush on Gaston. To the point that I actually at one point rewrote part of the Gaston song to allude to this. I don't know if I should sing it or if we don't have time for me to go off and sing it. But
I think we all know it, so I think we're good. I agree. Like time is kind of a yes answer.
mostly because the brainstormer is going, for the love of God, don't sing. That's why.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't want to hear that song. I've heard it so many times. I don't want it in my head when I'm trying to sleep.
Okay, fair enough. And also, he doesn't want me to sing. Anyway, moving on.
It became a global news story. Ultimately, the practice seemed to have no impact on ticket sales. That I'm gonna say that. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Again, the stupid thing about the whole LeFou controversy is Disney shouldn't have started it to begin with, because LeFou has always been gay, and people shouldn't have cared because LeFou has always been gay. The man had a guy crush on Gaston you could see from space.
The upshot: Disney hoped The Little Mermaid would generate as much as $1 billion worldwide, with the Furor, F-U-R-O-R.
Fervor.
Fervor?
I think so.
Evaporating once the film arrived in theaters. Feedback scores from test screenings were strong, as were early reviews. Alan Menken just told me that he thinks this one is better than the animated film. Robert A. Iger, the chief executive, said at the film's premiere last month, referring to the Oscar-winning composer.
Okay, on the topic of this one being better than the other one, fuck that noise entirely. The only thing that I will honestly give you is better than the animated version, and may I be struck by lightning if I am lying about this. Melissa McCarthy did a fucking Oscar-worthy performance as Ursula. She was really fucking good. Genuinely. And just to be clear, when my friend Englentine and I heard that there was going to be a live-action Little Mermaid a couple of years ago, we were both abjectly terrified of the idea of Melissa McCarthy playing Ursula. We were absolutely horrified that she would basically play the character like she plays every other version of herself, and would be absolutely terrible. But no, Melissa McCarthy was actually the best part of that movie, unironically. Also, speaking of things that were not as good in the live action version as they were in the animated version, why in the fuck did you cut Le Poisson and the character of Louis from the original? That was one of my favorite songs in the original, and you just cut it entirely. And Louis is gone now. Fuck you.
Louis?
The chef, the one who traumatized Sebastian by cooking.
Oh. It's been a long time since I've seen The Little Mermaid, and I mostly remember the animated show.
I remember the show too. The show was really. The one I remember the most was the episode about the bad luck creature, and Ursula wanting to kill it because she had bad luck all day. Mostly because when I was a really little kid, we rented that on VHS and we never returned it. So we ended up just having to pay for the thing.
Buddha?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Little Mermaid will top out closer to 600 million box office analysis said on Sunday, largely because the film faltered overseas, where it was review bombed, with online trolls flooding movie sites with racist one-star reviews. The film has done well in North America, outperforming Aladdin and receiving an A grade from ticket buyers and CinemaScore exit polls.
Okay.
Although attendance by white moviegoers has been soft in some parts of the United States, according to analysis, support from Black and Latino audiences have made up this gap.
Okay, fuck you. This is not a race issue. What it is people in foreign countries go to American movies to see American things reflected in them. And as such, they didn't like the race swapping. Also, fuck you, because anytime a movie gets widespread negative press from the audience, you use the phrase review bombing to discredit it. Also, if this was a internet-based backlash that was being artificially stoked, you would think it would affect both Americans and foreigners equally, because the internet is, that fantastic World Wide Web thing there. The fact that more people in the U.S. wanted to see it probably has more to do with the fact that foreign countries are a lot less tolerant of overt race swapping and lack of quality in these than the American audience is. And again, I just want to throw this out there. While Halle Bailey, her name is too similar to Halle Berry. I'm sorry, but that just is the case. But while Halle Bailey did fine with the musical bits, her acting in the non-musical scenes was kind of crap, and the standout performance of all people was Melissa McCarthy. So there's that. Moving on.
Okay. I liked it as well. I mean, so was a few other films by critics. Also, so was Final Fantasy 16. Also, I got a petition to rename RPG made in the West to WRPGs and rename JRPGs to RPGs. As much as the good RPGs have been from Japan in the past decade, most countries outside of America hate it, like 90% of the world.
Yeah, like people in foreign countries saw the race swapping, said we went to the movies to see an American movie, and they're not giving that to us, to fuck off. And again, regardless of politics of any kind, it must be said that the standout performance was Melissa McCarthy, not Halle Bailey. Again, her name is too similar to Halle Berry. I'm sorry.
Also, Nami and Lilo from Leo and Stitch, they are never confirmed Native Hawaiian. Skin color is in the sun is more tanned. We never get confirmation of Lilo's father or Nami's father. We only know their mother left them the house that Lilo and Nami live in.
I call bullshit on that. They were very obviously supposed to be Polynesian. They don't resemble tan white people at all. They are Hawaiian. It's a thing.
Yeah, I assume Hawaiian too. I mean, right.
Like you can tell based on the facial structure. Regardless of race or regardless of skin color, you can tell by the facial structure. They're very obviously of Polynesian extraction.
Anyway,
which is good for the animators to actually replicate the nuances of that facial structure as well as they did.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Miss Bailey declined to comment on the racist response to the film. While the international opening was softer than we would have liked, the film is playing exceptionally well, which we believe sets us up for a very long run. He said on Saturday. Miss Bailey, 53, has survived box office shows that were far worse, including misfires like The Lone Ranger. For the record, I like The Lone Ranger.
By the way, the box office has been updated since this article was produced, and in actuality, The Little Mermaid probably isn't going to make it to 600 million.
I mean, they don't look like the skin color of Native Hawaiians. They have more tan skin color than anything else. It's just never been confirmed.
I chalk it up to the color scheme because, again, the facial structure is the way the facial structure is. So that's not the skin tone of. That's also not the skin tone of tan white people. I have seen enough tan white people in my time to know what tan white people look like, and even taking animation into account, that's not what tan white people look like. With the facial structure and a lot of other body structure things in their animation, they are supposed to be Native Hawaiians, and I refuse to believe anything else.
I never said they were white.
Well, reasonably speaking, those are the only unless you want to assume that one of their parents was black, which I think would strain credulity a little bit. But yeah, no, they're as close to Native Hawaiians as the animators could get, and I think it's silly to say anything otherwise. Just like it's silly that they actually did get a Native Hawaiian person to play Nani in live action, and a bunch of SJWs bitched at her because she was too light skinned, even though she was actually fucking Hawaiian.
Anyway, we really gotta get through this article. We misfired with The Lone Ranger. The rest said about his live action Mulan better, but Disney has always supported him. I have taken some big swings and had some big misses, Mr. Bailey said. I'm grateful that the leadership of the company understands that it's part of any creative business. Miss Bailey has been president of the Walt Disney Studios Motion Picture Production for 13 years, an eternity in Hollywood, where film shapes are often jettisoned every few years. For that time, Disney has been roiled by executive firings, multiple restructuring efforts, and shifting strategies for film distribution. Steady-handed Miss Bailey, who is popular with stars and their agents, has helped provide stability.
Because, again, I resent the notion that race has anything to do with anything. Just period. Like most people don't subscribe to the racial hive mind theory at all. Disney. Like, yeah, moving on.
I mean, most Native Hawaiians have had children with whites for a long time now, close to 120, 140 years, because Hawaii was its own nation until the 1960s. I was into notion as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know. That's actually, I mean, grand scale wise, that's relatively recent.
Well, yeah, that's why you can still tell, Polynesian ancestry in Native Hawaiians.
Okay. Okay.
And of course, not every Polynesian person has shacked up with a white guy, or a white girl. So there's that too.
Oh yeah. Again, you learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
He's a nice, decent, respectful, fair guy who does his job quietly without fanfare. Said Kevin Hudane, again, the same name going, I'm sorry. Creative Artist Agency co-chairman. That doesn't mean that he is passive, quite the opposite. He gets his hands dirty. If the deal isn't working, he gets in there and he finds a way to make it happen.
Okay, but I don't care his moral qualities as an actual human being. I care that he makes reasonable, creative decisions, and he doesn't. So, irregardless of his morality as a person, he's not good at his fucking job and should go. Because unless it has slipped your mind, Disney, we're not here to be morally lectured by you. We're here to get quality product from you. If you have someone in your company that can't provide said quality product, then show them the door. If they're not good at their job, they should go, regardless of how moral they are. Yeah, I don't know when Lilo and Stitch is supposed to take place. I think it's supposed to be in relatively real time, so right around the time the movie came out. But I don't know because Lilo also has a Elvis obsession and a record player, so maybe it's supposed to be earlier than that.
I mean, I had a record player about when I was in the 2000s.
Well, and I have several record players because I collect antiques and because records are awesome, and they just sound better than CDs. But point being, between that and the obsession with Elvis, I'm guessing it actually might be set during around the 70s. Although when I was a kid, I just chalked that up to, people in Hawaii love Elvis, which fine.
Well, yeah, they refer to Elvis in past tense, so it definitely hinted at that Lilo is using very secondhand stuff.
Yeah, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference racial wise anyway.
Anyway, in 2014, for instance, Mr. Bailey flew to Budapest from Los Angeles at a moment's notice to have dinner with Angelina Jolie. She had agreed to star in Maleficent, but soon to be getting cold feet after reading a revised script. Whatever he told her worked. Maleficent and a sequel took a combined $1.3 billion.
Yeah, I don't blame Angelina Jolie for Maleficent being bad. That was mostly down to the writing and story. They should have just actually told the Sleeping Beauty story from Maleficent's perspective and let Angelina Jolie villain it up. But they didn't. They tried to go the sympathetic villain route. And the sympathetic villain route can work to a degree, but it sure as shit shouldn't work for characters like Maleficent or Ursula because they are awesome specifically because they enjoy being evil. Like they know they're evil and they own it. I mean, how Maleficent refers to herself as the mistress of all evil in Sleeping Beauty, and she is on cloud nine about that fact.
Okay. Sean is what we don't see often these days. He's certainly not in film. He's really said by email. He's consistent, stable, and decent. When we have challenges, as all films do, he's even fair. It may not be exciting for a story, but it is what we need more of.
I don't care how decent of a person he is. If he's not good at his job, then fuck off. And by the way, he's not good at his job.
Disney's live action films do not often showcase women before Mr. Bailey arrived, and diversity was almost non-existent. Mr. Bailey has almost exclusively focused on female-led stories. He has also championed young actresses of color, Storm Reed, Nico Parker, Naomi Scott, the female directors including Ava
DuVernay.
Wrinkle in Time, Julia Hart, Stargirl, and Mia Queen of Quake.
Okay, enough with this bullshit. You are telling me that the company that gave us the Disney Princess brand, of which there are like 8 to 10 characters now, didn't focus enough on women? Or are you actually telling me that they weren't feminist enough? That's what you mean, isn't it? This is yet another case of confusing adherence to the feminist ideology with speaking to the hive mind of all womanhood or some shit. Yeah, those aren't the same thing. Feminism doesn't speak for womanhood. Hell, in a somewhat recent statistic I saw, only 8% of people in America and 20% of people in the UK even identify as feminist. So even if every single person identifying as feminist believed that ideology spoke for all womankind, they're not even a sizable plurality of the people in question. Like 8% is virtually nothing, and 20% is not even a fourth. So yeah, no, feminism doesn't speak for women, let alone the fact that some of those people who identify as feminists were probably men or of other minority status.
I think what he's doing is actually important. That Gina Davis, an actress and gender equity activist.
Fuck you.
Hold on.
Equity is bullshit.
He has more to say, so. Right. Let me restart that. I think what he's doing is actually important. Said Gina Davis, an actress and gender equity activist. It's not just about inspiring little girls. It's about normalizing for men and boys, making it something almost see a girl do being interesting and important things and taking up space. What fucker? That's been around for a fucking while. You acting like that's a new goddamn concept.
Yeah, again, you're confusing womanhood or femininity with feminism. Those aren't the same thing, and they haven't been the same thing for a long fucking time now. Also, again, I know I jumped the gun slightly on this when I heard the word equity, but I am an egalitarian. I am after equality, actual equality, not ideological equality, not some other abstract definition of equality. I'm after equality. I'm an egalitarian. But equity is fucking nonsense. Fuck equity in every hole. Equality, yes. Equity, absolutely fucking not.
Uh, Next film from Mr. Bailey's division, Haunted Mansion, arrives in theaters on July 28th and stars Lakeith Stanfield and Oscar nominee for Judas and the Black Messiah, Rosario Dawson, Owen Wilson, and Tiffany Haddish. Haunted Mansion was directed by Justin Simien, the creator of Dear White People and inspired by a Disney theme park ride. So I've been wanting to talk about the new Haunted Mansion because I saw the trailers and I thought we could talk about them, but one, like just get it off my chest, I think it's weird and kind of stupid that they're releasing it in July.
Why the fuck?
Yeah, why?
It's not as though there's a supernaturally or dark fantasy oriented holiday right in the middle of October or something. Oh wait. What?
I do say I think it looks good from what I've seen of it, like the trailers.
Okay, the thing is, it looks. Here's the thing. It looks okay.
Mhm.
It looks better than the previous Haunted Mansion movie, the one that starred Eddie Murphy. Granted, that's not a high bar to clear by any stretch of the imagination because that movie was kind of awful. But here's the thing. Number one, I didn't realize Owen Wilson was supposed to be in it.
He's
But now that I
permanent.
know, Owen Wilson is supposed to be in it, it points out to me that I might be a weird cinephile nerd on this point, but for those that don't know, in the I think early 2000s, there was a remake of the movie The Haunting, and it featured Catherine Zeta-Jones and Owen Wilson in it. So now that I know Owen Wilson is in this new Haunted Mansion movie, did someone literally just see The Haunting remake and go, "We could do that for Haunted Mansion"? I am now slightly paranoid about that. Although, frankly, here's the thing. Here's the other thing about the Haunted Mansion remake. Um, I wish they would go a little darker because when I, and this is something I've said pretty much since the original Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion came out. Granted, I was a really really fucking little kid at the time, but based on the concept of Haunted Mansion, I kind of wish it was more akin to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, like that level of like dark fantasy for kids kind of thing.
Uh,
Um, I think the Haunted Mansion trailer that I saw looked a little bit overly comedic to me, and if I were you, I would do what they did with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and make it a little darker and more
um,
grandiose and serious.
I will admit the second trailer was very comedic, but the first one had a really good tone to it. I think. Like,
Yeah, but they did that. But that's the thing; they didn't really stick with it.
yeah.
But we'll talk about it more in October because there is a holiday devoted to this kind of thing that you would think Disney would want corporate synergy with, but never fucking mind. Why the fuck isn't Haunted Mansion coming out in goddamn October?
I don't get it either, man. Uh, anyway, I felt that we had an opportunity to try and create a really cool Disney appropriate PG-13 movie that does have some real scares, but also charms and delights. As Bailey said, Bailey, who watched The Little Mermaid 18 times as it works its way through Disney's pipeline, has more than 50 movies in various stages of development and production, including live-action versions of Moana, Hercules, and Lilo and Stitch.
Okay, why are you remaking Moana so early? Because Moana like came out not even 10 years ago. Um, like is Moana even 5 years old?
I don't know. I never watched that movie.
But like, do you remember when it came out? Because I want to even say it's not even 5 years old.
Give me a second. I'm looking it up.
The only live action remake that does kind of sound good to me is Disney's Hercules, because because Hercules didn't make that much money at the box office originally, so having another go at it wouldn't be too bad. Although, here's the thing. Disney's Hercules is a ginger, so are you gonna blackwash him again? Or are we gonna get black Hercules?
You're gonna feel old.
Hit me.
Well, Soka already said it before. 2016,
Yeah, so
7 years.
yeah, not even 10 years old. And they're already doing a live action. Like The Rock is still young enough that he could probably play Maui in live action, which brings up the question of why they didn't just make the movie in live action in the first fucking place. But whatever. But yeah, why would like Lilo and Stitch is just old enough that I could see them justifying the live action remake treatment. But okay, here's an idea. Here's while I'm doing Disney's homework for them. Do Emperor's New Groove, but instead of doing Emperor's New Groove in live action, do Kingdom of the Sun. Because for those that don't know, Emperor's New Groove is actually not the movie that Disney originally intended to make based on Incan culture. They originally were going to make a movie called Kingdom of the Sun, wherein the crux of the movie was going to be Yzma was an evil sorceress who wanted to blot out the sun and render things into eternal night so that she could keep her youth because she made a deal with the Incan god of darkness. And in the original version of this, she even had her own villain song, which you can still find on YouTube. Actually, it was called "Snuff Out the Light." The problem was they originally kind of wanted it to be in the same rough tone as Atlantis Lost Empire or Treasure Planet, like in terms of seriousness. But when Atlantis Lost Empire and Treasure Planet didn't do well, they retooled the movie and made it more comedic, and the result was Emperor's New Groove. And I love Emperor's New Groove, don't get me wrong, but me and every other every other obsessive Disney fan in the world has been waiting to see what Kingdom of the Sun would have been for decades. I want to see a version of Kingdom of the Sun.
All right. Okay, so apparently The Rock is playing Maui in live action, and Lilo and Stitch was released in 2002, so 20 years it's been, or 21.
Yeah, so it's just old enough that a remake could be justified. But Moana is not even a decade old.
Anyway, moving on. Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Hocus Pocus 3 is happening. His division makes 2 or 3 big budget films annually for release in theaters and 3 modestly budgeted movies for Disney Plus.
Okay, here's the thing. I didn't mind Hocus Pocus 2. I genuinely didn't mind Hocus Pocus 2. It was nowhere near as good as the first one, or bizarrely as edgy as the first one, mind you. But I didn't mind Hocus Pocus 2. But as someone who actually watched Hocus Pocus 2, I know that Mary, Sarah, and Winifred were released into the afterlife at the end of Hocus Pocus 2. So how exactly in the fuck are you going to do a Hocus Pocus 3?
Yeah.
The whole impetus behind the release into the afterlife thing in Hocus Pocus 2 was it was supposed to be inarguably permanent. So the fuck? Or are you gonna make the main characters the characters from Hocus Pocus 2, the ones that got Winifred's book at the end, that actually turned out to be a coven of witches? Like that could almost make sense. Although give the shopkeeper a role, because the fact that he did years worth of study and practice and made a whole bunch of new black flame candles and doesn't even get to be qualified as a warlock pisses me off.
The Boss of the Lion King, a photorealistic prequel directed by Barry Jenkins, the Oscar-winning Moonlight screenwriter, is scheduled for release in 2024. As Bailey said, The Lion King could expand into a big epic saga like the Star Wars franchise. There's a lot of room to run if we can find the stories instead.
I'm also curious to know whether they're gonna move any of these back further because of the writer strike. Because a bunch of Marvel movies got moved back 6 months, and and even the Avatar movies got pushed a year further apart. So I'm curious whether a lot of these are even going to stay on the release dates cited here.
Restarting the 5-film Pirates of the Caribbean series is another priority, although nothing official has been announced. We think we have a really good, exciting story that honors the films that have come before, but also has something new to say, Mr. Bailey said. Will the franchise's problematic star Johnny Depp return as Captain Jack Sparrow? Non-committal at this point, Mr. Bailey said, simply pinching the door open.
Stop. Okay. Johnny has had his trial. He's had his day in court, and he was found basically innocent on all charges. How in the honest fuck do you think you can get off calling him problematic still? If anyone in that relationship is problematic, it's fucking Amber Heard. The woman basically was revealed as an abuser to, like, in public to the world, and yet you have the titanium balls to consider Johnny Depp to still be problematic, even when his innocence was proven for all the world to see, pretty much. Yeah, I'm with Ahsoka on this. Amber Heard should never work in anywhere ever again, but Johnny Depp, frankly, based on all the bullshit you put Johnny Depp through, nuking his career on the basis of nothing but an accusation, you should be bending over backwards to please Johnny Depp. You should be coating the ground on which he walks with rose petals at this point, just to make it up to him for all the bullshit you pulled on him during the Amber Heard fiasco. You sure as fuck shouldn't be calling him problematic.
I also don't think Pirates of the Caribbean needs to be touched on anymore. I'll be honest.
I agree. Like, I liked On Stranger Tide, but Dead Men Tell No Tales was terrible. It was absolutely terrible, and I don't even want it to be in canon anymore.
Yeah. I like things about it, but I feel like the overall thing obviously was lackluster. Anyway. Moving forward. Yeah. One of the knocks on Mr. Bailey is that he has not created a new franchise. Almost none of his bets on original movies have paid off. The Sled Dog drama Togo, made for Disney Plus in 2019, was a critical hit that failed to break out. Tomorrowland, an ambitious fantasy from 2015, crashed and burned. I liked Tomorrowland. I'll be fully honest. I liked it.
It was okay. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it wasn't bad.
At some point, studios cannot endlessly recycle old stuff. A Xerox ends up as a blank page.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing one more batch of remakes in like 20 or 30 years of all of these, because turning the animated movies live action wasn't a bad idea. What was a bad idea is turning them into live action and then making them crappy ripoffs. Because, like, if you actually took the time and the effort to replicate what made the original awesome and maybe add some new material to them, you could basically wind up in the same position as the famous Glenn Close 101 Dalmatians movie. That's how you do a live action remake. God, I love that so much. The Glenn Close 101 Dalmatians. Maybe I'm the only one old enough to remember those.
I remember it.
I also remember there was a 101 Dalmatians TV show where Cruella was constantly leaving memos to herself on a tape recorder, which I always found funny.
It's really hard to crack through and get an original, usually commercial wins. Miss Bailey said, "We're going to keep trying." He pointed to a project based on the Graveyard Book about a boy raised by the supernatural occupants of a cemetery. Huh. Actually, doesn't sound bad.
I don't want Disney to be behind it, though.
No, I agree.
Well, okay, I take that back. I don't want modern Disney to be behind it, though. Because Disney when it's actually working can be good, but it hasn't been for a while.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Every studio has been struggling to keep up with original hits, but then the added layer seems to come with any Disney effort adds to a degree of difficulty. Like Mr. Iger, Mr. Bailey does not hide his political leanings. He is close to Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, a friendship that started in 2002 when Mr. Bailey helped a fundraiser for him in Hollywood. Mr. Bailey has a lot of famous friends. He goes way back with Ben Affleck, helped Dwayne Johnson start Tequila Brand, and serves on the board of Robert Redford's Sundance Institution.
I'm sorry, but you work for Disney, you have no soul now. Like, and I'm not even saying that as a bad thing. I'm saying you're not supposed to. When you work for Disney, your body, breath, and soul belong to Disney. You don't get the luxury of political positions anymore. Or at least that was how it was back in the day when Disney was functioning properly. Because here's the thing. I think I can speak for everyone when I say we don't want to be morally lectured by entertainment, and certainly not morally lectured by corporations. Full stop. Just give me the product I want to buy, or GTFO. That is my stance on corporations, and in particular entertainment corporations. You don't get a political position, you don't get a political opinion, fuck off.
Yeah, Soko, I saw your comments about Kingdom of the Sun. I was just reading. Oh, we gotta get to this article. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't address them earlier. Obviously, she was talking about the cease and desist stuff. People trying to do the whole redoing of Snuff Out the Light. Like Disney kept suing them, or
the only problem with a modern remake of Kingdom of the Sun would be we can't resurrect Eartha Kitt from the dead, because she was the original voice of Yzma. But we probably could use the audio from her original performance in Kingdom of the Sun, or at least what we have of it.
But yeah, no, I agree. That's stupid and really fucked. With people who are fans who are trying to recreate it and stuff. Anyway, I got 2 paragraphs left. So, well, a paragraph actually. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it's all there. So they could literally just do a photorealistic rendering of CGI and do it that way. But
I don't know. Anyway, but Miss Bailey is in the business of making movies for everyone. That challenge is part of what keeps his job interesting. He said, "How do you deal with audiences that are changing outside our country, inside our country?" Miss Bailey said, "How do you tell stories that matter to everyone in a world that is increasingly polarized?" make good
You make stories that are good regardless of your intentions, desires, or opinions. You make stories that have this thing we call universal appeal. In the sense of the stories that don't give a shit about your identity or your politics or your underlying philosophy. Because really good things that do have universal appeal to the, racist KKK person just as much as they appeal to, the Bleeding Heart Gandhi type person. Because when you're good at telling stories, when you're good at telling stories, you become a servant to the story. The story does not become a servant to you. This really shouldn't take that much figuring out, but since Disney appears to have its head all the way up its ass, yeah, it's a very simple thing. Ignore identities altogether and just tell stories that appeal to people. It's really not that hard.
Alright, so we are going
And no, not everyone will show up if you do that, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say because of time purposes, it's almost midnight. We're going to skip the Spider-Verse article and move that to next week with the Call of Duty one.
Yep, next week.
Yeah, and just end on from BamPowSmack.com. Yeah, BamSmackPow, sorry, .com. The featuring actors in the final running for James Gunn's Superman, written by Cody Schultz, published 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Okay. The latest Superman Legacy updates reveal James Gunn has narrowed his list down to 3 actors in the running to play the next Man of Steel. From the moment it was announced that DC would not be bringing Henry Cavill back to play Superman in the new DC universe, fans have been speculating over who James Gunn and Peter Safran might have to play the next Man of Steel.
Well, I mean, and being mad at not bringing back Henry.
Yeah, we voice our opinions on that all the time, so I don't want to like.
The man is a geek. He should have been allowed to play the character as he knew the character should have been played, instead of dancing to the nihilistic drum of Zack Snyder or Christopher fucking Nolan.
That and also what was it? And we both agreed that it was kind of too soon that they're already trying to recast Superman.
Honestly, what they should have either done is ignore the big 3 characters entirely and broaden out the rest of the DC universe for a change, or waited about 10 years until about 2038 and release a version of the DC universe that coincides with the 100-year anniversary of DC Comics. That would have been smart. And you could even call it DC Golden Age. It would be a really good marketing strategy, and it would allow you to quietly weather the storm that Marvel is currently, going down in. Because imagine a world where Warner Brothers was smart enough to wait until like 2038, and that way, long after Marvel has crashed and burned, DC could bring the superhero genre back to the fore.
Anyway, go on.
Mm-hmm.
In the time since Superman Legacy was first announced as being in development, there has been a lot of speculation about the type of actor DC was looking for, including the age in which they were hoping to cast. There has also been a slew of actor names tossed around on the internet from both fans and insiders, with a diverse group of A-list actors connected to the film. Due to the writer's strike, it was unclear whether DC would proceed with the casting process. However, it appears not only has casting been underway for the role of Clark Kent, but Gunn Company are reported to have narrowed the field down to 3 including actors. Who is playing the next Superman? After months of reviewing audition tapes, James Gunn and Peter Safran are rumored to have 3 actors in the running for the role of Superman: Nicholas Hoult, David Cornsweet, and Tom Brittney. This suggests that one of the 3 actors will be tapped to play Man of Steel and Superman Legacy, and join an elite group of actors who have played DC's iconic hero. Okay, I know Nicholas Hoult from like a lot of different things, and I've heard Cornsweet tossed around a lot by like fans and stuff.
He seems to be the one everyone is leaning towards if it can't be Henry.
To be fair, he has a very young-looking Superman vibe to him.
Well, yeah, and depending on how long they go for, he can certainly age into the role as well.
I'm just looking up written.
Honestly, Nicholas Hoult is too small. He just doesn't have the physicality. Period. Because I've seen the most recent thing I saw him in was Renfield, and he was good in that, but he sure as shit wasn't Superman.
I don't disagree with you. Although I have heard people have also suggested that he would make a great Lex Luthor.
That honestly would be better. Having Luthor played by Hoult and having Crowhurst or Crowsweat play Superman, that would be good.
Yeah.
Also, isn't Nicholas Hoult too old for what they want to go for?
I'm not sure. I mean, he looks young enough, so.
He looks older to me. He looks like he's in like his 30s.
Yeah.
He certainly looked older in Renfield. Granted, that might have been makeup. I don't know.
But yeah, Tom Brittney he's a British actor, so, and he hasn't been in a lot of things, so he's a relatively unknown actor. Although apparently he was in a 2020 film with Tom Hanks called Greyhound. So, again, I feel bad for whoever is cast, even though I do think anyone who is cast would be a good choice. It sucks because there's going to be this negative connotation against them due to like fans.
The shadow of the Henry Cavill that should have been.
Yeah.
Is going to bite DC in the ass. It's that, and here's the thing: it wouldn't bite them so far in the ass if DC or James Gunn knew how to read the fucking room. Instead of keeping quiet on the subject entirely, instead of trying to placate the fans, they actively go out of their way to spite Henry Cavill and just spite his fans and call them toxic and dude bros and childish and every other fucking negative name in the book. So, like, you do realize that for better or worse, the Snyderverse did make a bunch of fucking money. So it's probably better for your bottom line, if nothing else, to at least try to stay on somewhat good terms with them. The fans of those movies, I mean, because using the most recent DC movie as an example, The Flash made less than Black Adam, and as of this weekend, it had a larger drop than Black Adam. Its drop was actually on par with Morbius. in its
I mean,
second weekend.
it's not surprising, to be honest.
So again, also keep in mind that The Flash actually made less in its entire opening weekend than Man of Steel made on its opening day. Now, mind you, I do not care for Man of Steel. Not at all. It is a terrible, terrible fucking movie. It is the worst movie in the Snyderverse. But it must be said that 10 fucking years ago, Man of Steel made more on its opening day than Flash made in its entire opening weekend domestically.
As reported by Deadline.
And that's not even counting inflation.
So, okay. So, you good now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As reported by Deadline, Gunn and Safran are expected to meet with Holt, Cornswet, and Brittany sometime close to June 18th for in-person tests after making it through to the final rounds of the casting process. Unsurprisingly, all three actors are within the age range that DC was rumored to be eyeing for an act, which was an actor in their late 20s to early 30s. This Holt is 33, Cornswet is 29, and Brittany is 32. The trio are all also over 6 feet tall and definitely look the part of Clark Kent. Okay, so here's the biggest thing that an actor for Superman has to do the most right is to be able to play Clark Kent. And I'm not just talking about the disguise that Clark Kent puts up when he's around average people, like the clumsy dork.
Yeah, you know. Clark as he basically Clark as he was portrayed in Smallville, because that's the best portrayal of Clark Kent as a character sans disguise I've ever seen.
No, I'm talking about I don't like to do this, but I'm talking about the version of Christopher Reeves when he played Clark Kent in public. Like almost physically. Well, what I mean is to basically the perfect disguise that no one would expect. Everyone does the joke of, oh, it's just a pair of glasses, without actually taking account of all the massive intricacies that it takes to disguise.
It must be pointed out again that Henry Cavill, bless his soul, he actually tested this IRL. He went out in public wearing a pair of glasses, and even wearing a Superman t-shirt, but he changed his body language, and no one noticed him.
Yeah, that's seriously, most people don't get that there is so much that goes in. Bruce Wayne. There's actually a funny skit I remember seeing where Clark was asked to sub for Bruce Wayne at a party while Bruce was doing Batman stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Clark said that Bruce Wayne is basic as shit, like the Playboy version, that act.
Well, because in Batman's case, Bruce is the mask. The public persona is the mask.
Yeah.
And Clark has that to some degree too, because the Clark Kent we see in Smallville is different from the Clark Kent that is the public face.
Yeah, there are three versions of Clark Kent, which is Superman, which is what he can do, right?
Well, no, Superman.
No, let me explain before. It's just I would like to explain my reasoning before we have this discussion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
First one is Superman, which is what he can do. The hero, all that.
Well, but that's why I objected, because those aren't the same thing.
And I finished my thought, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Clark Kent, the reporter, the guy among the people, is the clumsy, the dork, the guy who appears smaller because he's literally, slouching so much.
Body language.
Yeah. And then there's Clark Kent, who is somewhat kind of in between both, who is the actual person. Not the persona, not Superman, but Clark.
I would phrase it a little differently. I would say Superman, as in the public figure, is the over exaggerated hero. Th- then you've got the public Clark, who is the introverted klutz, and then you've got actual Clark, who, again, like I say, is best portrayed in the show Smallville.
Okay, yeah, that was effectively what I was trying to say.
The reason I kind of autistically spurred there for a minute is the persona of Superman isn't just his abilities. The persona of Superman is the exaggerated sort of hero paragon figure.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just going off what I remember from like the Lois and Clark, the Adventures of Superman, the '90s Superman show.
Yeah.
Where Dean Kane's Clark says, "Superman is what I can do. Clark Kent is who I am."
Yeah, but the problem is, as well phrased as that is, it's not exactly true.
Well, I'm not gonna have this discuss really because we're gonna be here for hours if we try to talk this out.
Uh-huh.
I know us, so.
Uh-huh.
Ironically, Holt and Brittany are both from the UK, a similarity they share with Henry Cavill, meaning there's a strong chance Superman will once again be played by an English actor in the next iteration of the universe.
Honestly, I think Cronhurst is going to be it. He's the one I'm leaning towards because
I agree.
Nicholas Holt just doesn't have the physicality, and I don't know a damn thing about the other guy.
Tom Brittany.
Yeah, he has no face to me. But I've seen pictures of of Cronhurst, and he actually looks the part, and I could see him playing the part. And I actually saw Grace Randolph complaining that he looks too similar to Henry Cavill, and she asked out loud on a stream, "Why is it that DC fans require Superman actors to look so similar?" And literally, like in my head, I screamed, "Because they actually need to look like Superman, you bitch!"
Again, I'll say it as many times as I have to. I really don't like her.
I don't hate her, but like I actually can tolerate her to a degree, and she's really informed on like box office stuff. But especially lately, the more the sort of cultural zeitgeist is getting away from her, the more stupid things she says, and it genuinely just floors me. The fact that it never even occurred to her brain that, oh, they look similar because they all need to look like Superman, didn't even occur to her. And the funny thing was, she was trying to pitch the idea of a black Superman on this same stream, and I'm like, do you not see how that would piss everyone off because it isn't a good representation of the character? Like, and it's not even just Superman that this applies to. Doctor Strange, no matter who he is played by, if he's ever played by anyone else in live action again after Cumberbatch, whoever he's played by needs to look like Vincent Price, because Steve Ditko went out of his way to base Doctor Strange's look on Vincent Price. So whoever he gets played by needs to look like Vincent Price. And ideally, they would also act like Vincent Price, but that ship sailed a long time ago with Cumberbatch. So,
Right. Okay, again, sidetracked a bit by the whole Grace Randolph. I just don't like her because, and I think I said this before, like, she just she comes off as so pretentious.
I mean, she does. Yes, I'm not gonna lie. And again, it didn't used to be as bad. I've been noticing a lot more lately. Like the fact that she didn't get the Mario movie when it came out and thought that it would actually bomb just makes me laugh
Mm.
because it really feels like this is the thing that I've noticed recently that I never used to notice with her. The more the cultural conversation gets away from her, the more she comes off as a normie trying to have geek street cred and failing.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just she just and she doesn't come off as like every time I try to watch a video of hers, I just cannot stand her. I'm sorry. It's just like how she's carrying herself, how she's talking, and just it it both feels both fake, pretentious, and just I don't know,
Well,
man.
this is the thing with her. She's an old school journalist who got in early on the ground floor of the internet. That's the thing with her.
Okay,
Um, she's trying to bridge the gap between internet culture and old school journalism culture. And that's why it really doesn't always work with her. Anyway,
yeah,
I guess that's where we close out the episode.
yeah. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye. Adios, aloha, avidate, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.